Upon seeing the brown kobold's expression, Thorian's face broke into a warm smile. "You've performed remarkably. Congratulations," he praised. At that moment, Rumblestone sauntered over to the young kobold, extending a massive hand. The kobold clasped it gratefully and rose to his feet. Rumblestone's hearty laugh echoed around them as he shook his head in amusement. "You truly surprised me. I didn't anticipate you'd use your armor skill in such an aggressive manner," he confessed. In response to the mountain Goliath's compliments, the brown kobold merely chuckled. It was purely instinctual in the middle of the battle. "I hadn't premeditated it," he admitted modestly. Rumblestone gave the kobold's shoulder an appreciative pat, admiring his fighting spirit. "You have keen instincts," he declared, before posing a pivotal question, "but what path will you choose, warrior? Do you desire to immerse yourself in the heart of battle, or would you prefer to control the chaos from afar as a strategic leader?" The brown kobold's brows knit together in confusion. "I'm not entirely sure what you mean, but I suppose I'd prefer to be a leader? I already lead my band of kobolds. I'd like things to stay that way." At the kobold's reply, Rumblestone let out a robust, hearty laugh. "Good, that's an excellent answer. Given your choice, I'd recommend Taunting Shout as your starting skill. It would synergize perfectly with your rock-hard armor." As Rumblestone laid out his proposition, the brown kobold cast a questioning look towards Thorian, seeking his approval. Thorian, upon noticing the kobold's pleading eyes, couldn't help but smile. "It's an enticing suggestion indeed. Acquiring these two skills so early on would make you one of the most formidable frontline soldiers in the region." Bolstered by Thorian's approval, the brown kobold gave a firm nod. "All right, I choose this Taunting Shout skill." "Good choice," a Rumblestone approved, his gaze wandering away from the kobold and onto a distant point. Thorian understood that the guildmaster was likely viewing a screen much like the ones he had access to. "Oh, I see it now," the brown kobold exclaimed, his brows shooting up as he gazed at an unseen point in the air. Observing the pair respond to invisible prompts caused Thorian to chuckle at the absurd spectacle. It's funny how such a thing is now considered normal. After 10 years, it's almost hard to even notice the ridiculousness. Once the brown kobold had secured his starting skill, Rumblestone appraised him curiously. "Why not purchase an additional skill? Since it's your first, you'll get a 200 arcane coin discount. It would cost only 300. A look of confusion spread across the kobold's face as he turned to the guildmaster. "Arcane coins?" he echoed inquisitively. Thorian cut in swiftly with an explanation. "He hasn't yet received any quests," he clarified. "We were pressed for time and not all have been properly inducted as citizens." Rumblestone offered a wry smile before nodding in understanding. "That is quite a pity." He then turned to the brown kobold, his grin broadening. "Nevertheless, once you've completed your quests and earned some coin, come find me. I'll be able to sell you a new skill. We can even spar again to discover the one that suits your fighting style best." The brown kobold chuckled nervously and gave a dismissive shake of his head. "That won't be necessary. You could just show me the skills and I'll choose the one I like." At the kobold's reply, the Goliath feigned a disappointed pout. "Oh, that's too bad. I was eager for another sparring match." Meanwhile, Thorian was lost in thought, scratching his chin. Finally, he made a decision. He addressed the brown kobold, saying, "Once we return to the eastern gate, take your men and tour the village. Head to the hall and ask Melina to show you how to get quests. You can also visit the guilds so the kobolds can choose their classes." "Come to mine first," a Rumblestone interjected, addressing the brown kobold. "I want first dibs on promising new talents before that shady character gets his hands on them. He'd spoil their pure and courageous spirit." The brown kobold chuckled in response and reassured, "I can at least promise you that much." With their plan set, Thorian and the kobold bid farewell to the guild master before making their way toward the eastern gate. Along the way, Thorian explained the concept of quests and the benefits of their rewards. He also introduced the notion of arcane coins, emphasizing their role as the universal currency within the territories. Upon reaching the gate, the sounds of battle echoed from beyond the walls. Thankfully, only the kobolds Thorian had seen injured before were resting within the village, indicating no fresh casualties. As the gate swung open, Thorian could see that the skirmish was nearing its conclusion. Led by the trio of assassins, the kobolds were dispatching the remnants of the goblin pack that had dared to threaten the village with their spears and daggers. Turning to the brown kobold at his side, Thorian queried, "What's the average level of the kobolds?" The kobold scratched his head, considering Thorian's question. I'm uncertain at the moment, but before, they hovered around level 10. A few reached level 11 and one managed to hit 12. That's a commendable rate of progress, Thorian noted approvingly. Their class levels should ascend swiftly, which will bolster their strength considerably. Your group should find it easier to handle smaller Chaska packs, but you'll still need to exercise caution around a tailmasher. As for Thrycrenes, your best strategy at your current level is simply to flee. Thank you for the advice, I'll definitely remember it, the brown kobold responded with a solemn nod. Witnessing the serious expression on the kobold's face, Thorian reciprocated with a firm nod of his own. Boss, you're back? One of the assassins spotted Thorian's return and promptly bolted towards him. Seeing the assassin's beaming smile, Thorian couldn't help but be reminded of Nox's guileless demeanor. I guess they're taking on some of his personality. That's not a bad thing. Yes, I've given our friend here a tour of the village. He even managed to pick up a class along the way, Thorian informed the assassin. The assassin turned his curious eyes to the brown kobold. Oh? What class? Did you get the assassin class like us? It's the best one there is. No, I've chosen to be a warrior, the brown kobold replied, his chest puffed up with pride. Upon hearing this, the assassin clicked his tongue in disapproval. That's boring. And who are you calling boring? The brown kobold shot back, his eyebrows knitting together. I'll have you know, the warrior class is perfect for a leader like me. A brat like you wouldn't understand the might of such a class. Observing the friendly banter teetering on the edge of an argument, Thorian cleared his throat twice, bringing their bickering to a halt. Anyway, the plan now is for the kobold to lead his group on a tour of the village and help them all select their classes, Thorian continued. He turned his attention to the assassin and spelled out his instructions. Since I'll be assuming responsibility for guarding this gate, you can return to your patrolling duties. The eastern side will be secure under my watch. You got that, boss, the assassin responded, flashing a two-fingered salute. I'll go notify the others to shift positions. I'll do the same, the brown kobold chimed in. I'll gather the kobolds and brief them on our next steps. With a clear plan in mind, the two kobolds sprung into action. The trio of assassins promptly resumed their patrol as Thorian had instructed, while the brown kobold congregated the kobolds to inform them about classes, quests, and various aspects of territory know-how. After a brief explanation, the group proceeded into the village, escorting the injured members along so they could receive immediate healing once some of the kobolds ascended to priest classes. With Thorian left alone, he couldn't help but think back about the two brown kobolds. I should at least name those two, and also the rest of the original tribe. As for the rest of the brown kobolds, I should have someone else do the honors. Maybe Melina? However, Thorian quickly relegated those thoughts to the back of his mind. There would be time to attend to that task later. His immediate responsibility was protecting the wall and neutralizing any monster that ventured too close. Upon checking his mana pool, Thorian was surprised to find it almost completely replenished. He could readily feel the effects of the ether line attribute. Merely taking short rests was sufficient to recharge his mana fully. The group of kobolds, led by the brown kobold, took nearly 2 hours to conclude their tour. Firstly, they visited the village hall, where Melina briefed them on daily quests and the procedure to accept and complete them. Next, they traversed all the guilds, each kobold undergoing the guild master's test to identify their talent. This entire process was time-consuming, but eventually, they completed it and returned to the eastern wall. In the meantime, Thorian single-handedly combated all the monsters that dared approach his territory's border. While this responsibility might have seemed daunting to others, for him, it was a significant advantage. He didn't need to share his kills with anyone, thereby claiming all the experience points for himself. As per his routine, Thorian hunted goblins, chaskas, rebarians, thumpalopes, and a few thrycrenes. Intriguingly, it wasn't the giant mantises that presented the biggest challenge, instead it was the goblins. Similar to what happened with the orcs, a temporal spacetime distortion occurred in front of the eastern gate, giving rise to nearly 200 goblins. With a considerable number of hobgoblins among them, it was a formidable task to repel them all. Thorian leveraged his height and range advantage to reduce the number of hobgoblins initially, employing a blend of fireballs and waterballs. Having eradicated the evolved species, he could then dive into the fray and accumulate his experience points. By utilizing his combustion touch skill and his overwhelming stats, he managed to cut through the swarm of green monstrosities with ease, dispatching several with each strike. The tricky part wasn't the killing, but preventing them from climbing the wall after they scattered. Some managed to infiltrate the village, but Thorian's keen sense of smell enabled him to track them down and eliminate them. After the 2-hour interval, Thorian thought it best to check his status screen. Display panel. Ding. Status panel. Race Flame Kobold. Level 10/30ths EXP 238/1050. Class Magus. Level 20/20ths EXP Max. Lifespan 40 years. Cultivation Realm Chi Gathering 2nd Stage 5.3%. Stats. Strength 52. Agility 56. Constitution 31. Mana 60. Chi 14. Free points 15. Skills. Minor Fire Affinity passive. Flame Resistance passive. Fireball active. Combustion Touch active. Waterball active. Thorian's gaze sharpened as it rested on the last skill displayed on his stat panel, Waterball. Upon concentrating on it, the screen metamorphosed, providing detailed information on the selected skill. Waterball. Description: you summon a watery orb and launch it at your enemies, drenching them and knocking them off balance. Proficiency 38.9%. It is a decent increase in proficiency, but at this pace, it is going to take a few more days before I can finally advance my class. The requirements to progress his class to an elemental magus weighed heavy on his mind. Thorian's face twisted into a grimace at the thought. He had been engaged in relentless combat for the past 3 days, and he was still not halfway through. With his goal being the evolution from a kobold to a kobold, the challenge felt increasingly monumental. I also need to get more arcane coins to buy the last 2 skills. Contemplating the arcane coins he required, Thorian's mind wandered to his pending quests. It had been several hours since his last status check on the monster hunting quest. Given that he had obliterated entire tribes of monsters during that period, he deemed it high time to consult his quest journal. Journal. Cultivate your chi for 2 hours complete. Gather 100 wood units complete. Clear 1 dungeon daily. Pact with the Wolven Guardians unique. Purification of Arendal's Sanctuary unique. Revenge on the Monsters, partially complete rare. Milestones rewards. Kill 50/50th monsters, level +1. Kill 100/100 monsters, previous rewards and a class skill of your choosing. Kill 250/250 monsters, previous rewards and level +2. Kill for 79/500 monsters, previous rewards and a purple cloud weapon specific to your chosen class. Surveying the tremendous progress he'd made with his quests, a wide grin spread across Thorian's face. Yet, just as he began to revel in the anticipation of claiming all the rewards from the Revenge on the Monsters quest, he drew in a deep, steadying breath. I need to stay calm. I shouldn't claim the rewards right away. The value of instant level-ups increases with each level, so it would be wise to wait. Yet, as sound as this line of reasoning was, Thorian couldn't ignore the pull towards a different strategy. Gaining strength as rapidly as possible carried its own benefits, primarily the ability to take control of the situation and minimize potential mishaps. In the end, he realized he'd need to strike a balance between the two approaches. I will wait until I reach the maximum proficiency in Waterball. If then I need to claim the quest rewards to buy the last 2 skills, I would do so. As Thorian pondered over his next skill acquisition following Waterball, his choices were narrowed down to Wind Gust and Rock Bullet. The wind spell would sync beautifully with his fireball, but he was aware of his inability to cast the 2 spells swiftly enough to capitalize on this synergy. On the contrary, Rock Bullet clearly demonstrated offensive superiority. Unless the adversary deployed a defensive skill such as Rock Armor, it would penetrate the defenses of most regular monsters. This one-shot, one-kill type of ability would likely prove more valuable and easier to cultivate compared to the supportive Wind Gust skill. But that's after I finish training my Waterball skill. I need to focus on the present now. From his position atop the wall, Thorian discerned the rhythmic sounds of marching brown kobolds emanating from the tree line. A band of 16 furred creatures approached the eastern gate, their faces alight with excited smiles. Even those previously injured now moved with ease, their bodies showing no sign of any wounds. Has everyone received their classes? Thorian inquired, leaping from the wall to land before the brown kobold. A mixture of respect and fear filled the eyes of the kobolds as they turned towards him, their murmurs echoing words like king and a flame kobold. I guess they heard legends about flame kobolds in their world. Their reaction is understandable. Yes, they've all received their classes, affirmed the brown kobold, casting a glance over his comrades. 8 have chosen the path of the warrior, 2 are magi, and 5 have become priests. 5 priests, that's excellent news, Thorian acknowledged, his nod of approval palpable. He then shifted his gaze back to the brown kobold, querying, how many have selected the healing skill? 3 of them have, the kobold returned. The remaining 2 picked radiance. I figured that having that skill could significantly help us on the battlefield. The increase in strength and constitution it offers can be very useful. Your foresight is commendable, Thorian replied, his smile glowing with pride. While the healing skill is indeed beneficial outside of combat, radiance can provide the edge needed to survive or even triumph over enemies who might have previously claimed your life. His gaze swept over the 15 kobolds assembled before him. A few stole glances in his direction while others stared unabashedly, whether out of curiosity about his species or reverence for his status, Thorian couldn't be certain. They don't have any assassins, but this is a good enough composition to guard the wall. I would have liked a few more magi for long-range warfare, but I guess that brown kobolds don't have the best affinity to that class. Noticing Thorian lost in thought, the brown kobold prodded him back to the present. Should we assume our positions now and resume our duties? Yes, but before that, there's one important task to be attended to, Thorian answered. I need to bestow upon you a name. A name? The kobold's brow furrowed in puzzlement before his face lit up. Ah, like Nox has? Yes, please grant me a name. Acknowledging his request with a nod, Thorian rubbed his chin thoughtfully. Your name shall be Lapis, a term that translates to stone in the old language. Surprise flickered across Lapis' face before giving way to a smile of gratitude. Thank you, Thorian. You've been so generous to us, yet you didn't ask for nothing in return. Don't mistake my intentions, it's far from a one-sided transaction, Thorian corrected, shaking his head. You will repay me by safeguarding everyone in this village, those currently here, and those yet to arrive. Upon hearing Thorian's words, Lapis placed his hand over his heart and bowed slightly. I would lay down my life for this cause. There will be no need for that, Thorian reassured him, his chuckle accompanied by a comforting pat on Lapis' shoulder. Just concentrate on nurturing your troops' growth. I want them all to evolve into kobolds as swiftly as possible. You can count on me, Thorian, Lapis replied, his grin broad. You'll be commanding the strongest army in this forest in no time. Thorian smiled at Lapis' audacious promise but didn't comment. He simply bid him and the other kobolds goodbye and made his way towards the western gate. Here, he found a scenario strikingly similar to the one he'd encountered at the eastern gate a few hours earlier. With the injured count at 6, the trio of assassins couldn't perform their patrolling duties and had to stay around. As he did with Lapis, Thorian accompanied the other brown kobold around the class guilds to identify the one that suited him best. Interestingly, despite being a brown kobold, he exhibited a high affinity for magic and thus chose the path of a magus. Opting for efficiency in medium to large-scale battles, he chose Windgust over Rock Bullet. Once the brown kobold had settled on his class and spell, Thorian did not immediately exchange places with his group, unlike what he had done at the eastern gate. We're getting close to completing all the requirements for my stabilization plan. Once all of the kobolds receive their class, the village should be stable enough that I can afford to move out and search for dungeons to clear. Thorian's grin widened at the thought, but feeling greed taking over his heart, he stopped his mind from derailing any further. I can't be hasty though. Rather than just guard the western gate on my own, it's better if Nox is there to help me. I can train my waterball spell exclusively while he does most of the work. Understanding that he could strike 2 birds with 1 stone using this plan, Thorian changed his direction to the north side. Approaching the northern gate, he could easily discern the results of the orcs and Ventus's efforts. The section of forest encircling the village center had been almost halved. Even from a distance, the impact of Ventus's gale slashes was clear, each cast slicing through 3 or 4 trees and raising a billow of dust and dirt. Looking at the fallen trees in the distance, Thorian's thoughts drifted. I need to go and talk with Zogthar and the orcs. If they are to officially join our village, I cannot only give them the stick, they also need a carrot. Nevertheless, relieving the western kobolds from their guard duty to allow them to acquire their classes and quests was a priority. Thus, Thorian chose to delay his conversation with the orcs. That would be the final step of his stabilization plan. Heading towards the northern gate, Thorian was greeted by the sounds of battle cries emanating from beyond the wall. The resonating impact of spells and the clash of steel, interspersed with the grim stench of death, created a vivid tableau of a typical apocalypse battlefield. Ascending the watchtower stairs, he discovered Aqua relentlessly casting spells at the enemy on the other side of the wall. His triple water jet skill was being deployed with rapidity, each successful strike culminating in a small but potent explosion. Other than Gale Slash, that should be the strongest long-range attack we currently have. Though I haven't seen Saxum's skills yet. Observing Aqua's intense focus, Thorian felt a ripple of amusement. He found it hard to imagine many adversaries that could command such attention from the Water Kobold, especially given the support of the other evolved monsters. A swift appraisal of the scene outside swiftly laid Thorian's skepticism to rest. The opponents his men were contending with were undoubtedly formidable enough to warrant such diligence. The Berserker Kobolds were engaged in combat with a horde of Chaskas, while Nox and Forlun squared off against a pack of Tailmashers, with Aqua providing long-range support. The Tailmashers were commanded by a creature that towered above the rest, its furry body marked with streaks of purple and blue. Its claws crackled with sparks of lightning, while the three rocks at the end of its tails reverberated like thunderclaps each time they struck the ground. Beholding the formidable creature at the head of the three Tailmashers, Thorian's brows knitted together. A Thundermasher? Can they manage to face it alone? He cast a sweeping gaze across the battlefield. By comparison in number, the Kobloid forces seemed dwarfed. Their three evolved warriors were locked in ferocious combat against the swarm of Chaskas. Each of their mighty axe strokes claimed a life of an oversized feline, yet the relentless tide of adversaries did not wane. Meanwhile, the priest lingered at the rear of the tumult, his stature now elevated, his fur transformed from a dirty white to a silvery hue reminiscent of the assassins. Only the vibrant blue markings and lunar tattoos distinguished him clearly from his deadly counterparts. With a fervor imbued in his eyes, the priest chanted a lengthy incantation until a silver radiance enfolded the warriors. Their movements instantly quickened, each blow they delivered carried enhanced might. A supportive skill? And one that affects a large area at that? These evolutions are truly wondrous. It's roughly equivalent to the power of a first advancement shaman or a similar tiered class. Yet, while the tide of battle was decidedly in favor of the kobolds on one flank, Nox and Forlun found themselves in a precarious situation. Despite Aqua's protective water shield enveloping them both, and his triple jet stream assaulting the Tailmashers, they were still struggling against the Thundermasher. Each swing of its lightning-imbued claws left Forlun paralyzed and scorched, rendering him vulnerable to a merciless lashing from the beast's tail. The Thundermasher had the ability to amalgamate the trio of boulders on its tail into a colossal one, using it to strike the Moon Kobold with fearsome force. Yet, fortune was not entirely lost. The priest had another ace up his sleeve. With a concise chant, a beam of moonlight descended upon the beleaguered Forlun, mending his wounds. Long-range healing as well? Thorian's face bore a complex mix of surprise and delight. We need more priests to evolve. Concurrently, Nox grappled with the three Tailmashers. His shadow skill enveloped the beasts in a sinister aura, amplifying the effectiveness of Aqua's abilities. However, the liberated Thundermasher soon intervened, making the odds even more perilous for Nox. Should I intervene? Thorian's foot grazed the edge of the watchtower, poised to leap into the fray at a moment's notice. Nox was now contending with four adversaries simultaneously, and while three were battered, the fourth proved unyielding. The Thundermasher moved with astonishing speed, keeping pace with Nox even as the latter employed his shadow skills. Kobold's dark aura collided with the Thundermasher's blue lightning, but the overwhelming luminescence was gradually eroding the shadows. Just as Thorian braced himself to join the battle, a resonant roar arrested his movements. His muscles tautened instantly, his attention abruptly pulled towards the source of the roar, the three warriors. Their combined might reverberated in an awe-inspiring howl, striking terror into the hearts of their feline adversaries. Even the Thundermasher halted its assault, casting a glance intermingled with rage and fear at the origin of the roar. This gave Nox a brief reprieve, allowing him to retreat and put some distance between himself and his foes. Aqua wasted no time capitalizing on this chance. He directed his triple jet stream solely at the Thundermasher's face, causing the beast to howl in agony. The watery assault shattered its nose and jaw and gouged one of its eyes, blood dripping down its mangled visage. Rejuvenated by the lunar beam, Forlun rose to his feet and barreled towards one of the Tailmashers. Witnessing the Moon Kobold's courageous charge, Thorian couldn't help but smile as he summoned a sphere of water. Just as Forlun's axe cleaved into the belly of his target, Thorian launched his spell at another tailmasher, which was darting towards the moon kobold from the side. Just as the beast prepared to strike Forlun, the water ball collided with its chest, sending it sprawling to the ground. I suppose it's time to begin practicing this spell. Armed with a clear strategy, Thorian hurled water ball after water ball at the tailmashers, skillfully denying them any suitable angle of attack on his comrades. Meanwhile, the three warriors were cutting a swath through the petrified chaskas, their bodies swiftly joining the growing pile of defeated foes. Bodies blanketed the earth before the wall, the majority of them heaped directly against it. In a matter of hours, there would hardly be a patch of ground untouched by the fallen. The chaskas contributed incessantly to the gruesome pile, succumbing to the warriors' axes by the dozen each passing minute. Unyielding, the kobolds carved their path towards the other end of the battlefield where Nox and Forlun were engaged in their arduous combat. As the minutes slipped by, Aqua and Thorian provided sustained long-range assistance to Nox and Forlun, who employed a strategic hit-and-run tactic. It wasn't long before the three warriors eradicated the remaining chaskas, leaving only the Thundermasher and a severely injured Tailmasher in their wake. Faced with the combined onslaught of the evolved kobolds, the final two adversaries stood little chance. They were soon brought to their knees and subsequently defeated. "I've leveled up," Aqua declared, a note of satisfaction underscored by his emerging smile. "I've now attained the highest level for my class." "Congratulations," Thorian commended. "You're now eligible to advance your class. You have the choice to transition to a water mage straight away and gain increased power, or you can choose to hold off." The water kobold, initially nodding along with Thorian's words, cocked his head at the last comment. "Wait? What am I waiting for exactly?" "Potentially a superior class," Thorian explained, grinning. "The more basic skills you master, the better the class you can progress into. For instance, if you acquire proficiency in Wind Gust alongside Water Ball, you'll be eligible for the Ice Magus class, which wields wind, water, and ice magic." That's amazing." Aqua's eyes sparkled with enthusiasm. "I want to become an Ice Magus. I'll be significantly more powerful that way." But as Aqua's initial excitement faded, a note of confusion surfaced. "However, how do I learn the Windgust skill? You've said something about a guild earlier. Do I simply go there to get the skill?" "No, you'll need arcane coins to purchase it," Thorian corrected, shaking his head. "The quest you received from Melina rewards arcane coins. You must have completed a few of them by now, right?" Aqua's eyes glazed over as he browsed his invisible screens. After consulting his journal, he turned his gaze back to Thorian and replied, "I've completed 3 quests. All I need to do is gather 100 units of wood and clear a dungeon." "What is a dungeon, though?" "For the wood, you can utilize the trees the orcs have chopped down and left beside the altar. I'll have everyone collect some later," Thorian suggested. "As for the dungeon, we will clear one very soon. We just need all the brown kobolds to evolve so we can fortify our defenses here." Aqua initially furrowed his brows before casually shrugging. "I see. That seems like a sensible plan." "King." While the two magi conversed in the watchtower, a voice from below interrupted them. Looking down, Thorian spotted Kadar bowing to him. "Thank you, King. Thank you for giving me an opportunity. Thank you for allowing me to evolve." Hearing Kadar's heartfelt words and taking in his earnest expression, Thorian matched the gravity of the moment. "You don't need to thank me. Most of the effort to evolve was your own doing." He then let his gaze drift across the battlefield, strewn with the bodies of their adversaries, "and in this battle, you've more than repaid the favor. You've displayed your bravery and honor." Thorian then turned his attention to the other warriors. "All of you have. You are extraordinary and commendable warriors. You're overdoing it with the praise, King." Kryman hollered, his laughter reverberating across the battlefield. "We merely did what was expected of us," Bellafor chimed in, a chuckle punctuating his words. Thorian's gaze landed on the priest standing solo near the wall. "Priest, I am proud of you too. Even though your class doesn't equip you with many tools for combat, you still ventured out and hunted enough to evolve. Your courage hasn't gone unnoticed." With a gracious bow and a smile, the priest responded, "Thank you for the praise, my king." Meanwhile, Nox was helping Forlun to his feet. Despite the priest's healing, the moon kobold was still fatigued and slightly injured. When he heard Thorian's praise for the warriors, he could only look down, his face a tapestry of mixed emotions. "You too, Forlun." At the sound of his name, the moon kobold glanced up in surprise. Thorian, catching the look of astonishment on his subordinate's face, could only offer him a sympathetic gaze. Even in the face of grave danger, you didn't retreat and confronted the most formidable adversary. You are a true leader. Forlun's eyes widened, then he shook his head. It's nothing. I simply did what was required. Hearing the Moon Kobold's response, Thorian smiled gently. He then turned his attention to the Shadow Stalker. Nox, you performed excellently. I needn't say this, but you possess immense talent. Nox responded to Thorian's praise with a boisterous laugh, causing Thorian to shake his head in amusement. He then addressed the warriors once again. I hope you won't mind, but I need to borrow Nox for a bit. Just take that lazy bum, it's okay, Bellifer guffawed. He was just sitting around for all this time. It was only when that weird purple thing appeared and lots of those cat monsters came out of it that he started fighting. Hey! Nox shot back. You guys were slaying monsters too fast for me to lend a hand. Not wanting to entertain their squabbling, Thorian intervened. Enough with the childish banter. We have more work ahead. He then directed his attention specifically to Nox. Follow me, we're going to hunt together. At Thorian's command, they exited through the north gate, setting their course towards the west. Upon reaching their intended location, Thorian initiated a dialogue with the brown kobold, detailing the same protocol that Lapis had employed with his team. Once the briefing concluded, the Kobloid pack dutifully trailed their brown leader into the village to test their class aptitudes. With the group of Kobloids engrossed in accepting their quests and assessing their individual talents for each class, Nox and Thorian commenced their duty as guards. Thorian adhered strictly to his previous plan, utilizing solely his waterball spell for the entire shift. Despite Nox shouldering the bulk of the workload, Thorian's long-range assistance with his water spell was not without its merits. Nox's shadow engulfing ability amplified the impact of Thorian's waterball spell, turning it into a formidable weapon. Their combined powers enabled Thorian to shatter enemies' bones and blast them away with a potent shockwave. As the hours rapidly ticked away, Nox dispatched the final Rebarian from a group that had naively attempted to penetrate the village's defensive wall. He then scaled the barrier in a single leap, swiftly joining Thorian in the watchtower. Thorian, why aren't you using your other skills? Nox eventually queried, his bewilderment palpable. It would have been so much easier if you fought with me down there, we could have killed even more. Meanwhile, Thorian was assessing the advancement of his spell. Waterball. Description: you summon a watery orb and launch it at your enemies, drenching them and knocking them off balance. Proficiency 68.3%. Not too bad, this is great progress for just 2 hours of work. After evaluating his waterball proficiency, Thorian turned his attention back to Nox, shaking his head in response. That's not necessary, Nox. Our current hunting pace suffices. It's more crucial to increase my skill proficiency. Perched on the watchtower ledge, the Shadow Stalker cocked his head, his confusion unabated. Why is that? It's not really a good skill. Fireball is much more powerful. Upon hearing Nox's straightforward reasoning, Thorian chuckled. It's not as simple as that, Nox. My waterball skill training is geared towards unlocking a more advanced class. The more basic skills I perfect, the higher the quality of classes I can access. Nox's puzzled expression promptly morphed into surprise, quickly followed by a look of shock. Wait, is that really how it works? Should I be focusing on backstab more? Maybe I should get another skill and raise its proficiency too. That would be prudent, Thorian agreed, nodding, before falling into contemplation. Actually, now that I think of it, you should make a point of finishing off your enemies with backstab. Once you've slain a specific number using that skill, it will unlock a new one that can open the doors to a special class. Oh really? You should have told me that sooner, Nox chuckled in response. But thank you, every enemy I will kill after will be with backstab. As their conversation concluded, Thorian shifted his gaze to the vista beyond the watchtower. Foreboding howls and roars echoed from the forest's depths, yet their tranquility remained undisturbed by any immediate threat, affording them a brief respite. Thorian lifted his gaze to the sky, tracking the mid-arc transit of the twin suns across the heavenly expanse. These celestial twins, bound in a tidal system, journeyed across the sky at a synchronized pace and in approximate alignment. Despite squeezing every drop of value from each passing second, it feels like there's an overwhelming amount of tasks yet to be done. Especially that quest. Contemplating the human hunting quest, Thorian's eyebrows furrowed in concern. He bore no particular aversion to slaying humans, his past life was a testament to that, yet the sheer quantity required to complete the quest was staggering. If he intended for each of his men to meet the 500 kill quota, they would collectively have to hunt down over 30,000 men and women. This figure represented a significant proportion of Loxley's populace. That can't possibly be the correct approach. Even if feasible, exterminating them would unequivocally cast me as humanity's nemesis. From a diplomatic and political perspective alone, such a course is unwise, Thorian ruminated, scratching his chin. More importantly, that is just not in my nature. I am not a destroyer, I am a conqueror. Lost in his contemplation, Thorian's brows furrowed, a deep crease marking his concern. Eliminating a mere 500 humans shouldn't pose a significant challenge to me, which would lead to my securing the rare evolutionary variant and thus ensure my dominant position. At this point in time, the majority of them likely remain oblivious to the concept of classes. And those who are aware wouldn't pose a threat to someone like me, who has already gone through his first evolution. While Thorian was engrossed in his thoughts, Nox abruptly jolted him back to the present. Hey Thorian. I was meaning to ask you, when are the monsters going to stop trying to fight us? Are we just going to have to stay guarding the wall for the whole time? Hearing Nox's question, Thorian took a few moments to dismiss his previous lines of thought before refocusing on the present. Do you recall that strange purple anomaly from which those large cat monsters emerged? Nox's brow arched in puzzlement. Yeah, I do. But what has that got to do with anything? Those are known as portals, Thorian clarified. As we speak, these portals are manifesting throughout the forest and across the entire country. They will persist in unleashing hordes of monsters for another day and a half. Both Nox and Thorian cast a solemn gaze towards the forest before the Shadowstalker replied, I see. So we just need to hold out for today and tomorrow. We can do it. Contemplating the occurrences that were set to follow the first wave, Thorian couldn't help but chuckle. Well, it's not going to be all sunshine and rainbows post that. Some genuinely bothersome and terrifying creatures will emerge, but we'll deal with them when the time comes. Having spoken, Thorian glanced back towards the village. Ventus and his orc team had cleared the area around the western gates an hour and a half ago, and now, devoid of trees, Thorian had an unobstructed view of the village hall and the guilds. The squad of kobolds, led by the brown kobold, were progressing from the village center towards Thorian and Nox. From a distance, Thorian noticed that the previously injured kobolds had been healed by the priests. The brown kobold leading his team bore an exuberant smile, clearly delighted at the substantial power boost his group had recently attained. I should bestow a name upon him as well. This would ensure parity between the eastern and western gates. Pondering this, Thorian proceeded to commend the kobolds on their newfound prowess before bestowing a name upon the brown kobold. The appellation he settled on was Vivax, an old language term signifying energetic. Thorian believed this was apt for this particular kobold's disposition, and with that rationale, he selected it. Having delegated the responsibility of guarding the western gate to Vivax and his team, Thorian's next destination was the southern gate. Saxum, Ifrit, and Inley were stationed there, and the orcs tasked with timber cutting had already made their way to it. With the brown kobolds now comfortably integrated into the tribe, Thorian felt increasingly confident about advancing his plans of assimilating the orcs. I wonder what types of evolutions they'll gain access to once they unlock their classes. That would indeed be intriguing to observe. A grin spreading across his face at the prospect, Thorian strode towards the southern gate in the company of Nox. From a distance, they could witness the impact of Ventus's skill as trees toppled one after another. As they drew nearer, they could see the orcs carefully transporting tree logs towards the village center. Even from a distance, Thorian could discern a sizable mound of timber encircling the territory altar. Approaching the tree line, Thorian's ears picked up a familiar voice. In the heart of woods where wild winds play. Orcs heed the goblins' clever say. Axe bites deep and tall trees sway. With the breaking dawn we begin our day. Hearing the melodious notes wafting from the cleared forest, Thorian instantly identified the voice's owner. Bricks? What's he up to? As the pair drew closer to the voice's origin, they observed the goblin in question, engaged in singing and dancing while the orcs continued their labors undisturbed. Rather than wearing stern expressions, the orcs seemed notably more relaxed and comfortable. A goblin that sings and dances?
I have never seen something like that.
Nox exclaimed, turning towards Thorian with bright, eager eyes. Have you seen a goblin like that?
That is amazing.
Thorian wore an intrigued expression as he watched the cavorting goblin, remarking, "That's Bricks. He pleaded for mercy in the past, so I allowed him to join us." "Oh, so he's a part of us now?" Nox's surprise was evident. "That is great to hear. I like the way he sings, his voice is really good." Noting that Bricks was performing as instructed, Thorian navigated through the bustling orcs to reach Zogthar and Ventus. As he journeyed, the orcs cast unusual glances his way. However, instead of hostility and hatred, these gazes bore a sense of respect. Interesting, I wonder why that is? As Thorian and Nox weaved through the ranks of orcs, the insistent whispering amplified. Before long, they arrived at the clearing where Ventus, the White Kobold, was employing his gale/skill to fell trees. Zogthar, the burly orc, stood sentinel beside him, ready to heave the toppled timber once Ventus had completed his task. Noticing the approach of Nox and Thorian, Zogthar swiveled, his expression contorting into surprise. Caught off guard, Zogthar paused before inquiring, "Is it true?" Thorian's eyebrow arched at the ambiguous question. "What exactly is supposed to be true? Is it true you became the king of your tribe while still just a cobloid?" He clarified hastily, flicking a surreptitious glance at Ventus. "I heard you even bested a full-grown kobold." Thorian's gaze shifted to Ventus, a silent question in his eyes. Without requiring an explicit prompt, the kobold scratched the back of his head and chuckled. "I was just telling them about all the cool things you have done. In just 2 days you did so many things." Hearing Ventus's account, Thorian felt a twinge of surprise within, though he let none of it show. He merely returned Zogthar's gaze and confirmed, yes, what he said is indeed true. But that's not the whole story, it's merely the beginning. Upon receiving Thorian's affirmation, Zogthar's eyebrows shot up in intrigue. He murmured almost to himself, just like the Mazahethar. Catching the orc's cryptic whisper, Thorian's brow furrowed.
"What's that?"
"Oh, it's an old tale the elders used to regale us with," Zogthar elaborated. "An ancient orc king who supposedly claimed dominion over half the world. It's a pleasant myth to indulge in." Carefully considering the orc's narrative, Thorian broke into a grin. "I can't say I know much about this Mazahethar, but the latter part certainly appeals." He then turned to Zogthar and proposed, "What do you think? Fancy conquering the world?" Thorian's proposal momentarily stunned Zogthar. Grasping its implications, he brought his hand to his chest in a firm gesture and bowed slightly. "Yes. Under your rule, the whole world shall serve." Thorian nodded before issuing his command. "Zogthar, let's formalize this. Gather all the orcs and form a line." Right away, Zogthar acquiesced, springing into action immediately. He summoned the other orcs and delegated a few subordinates to retrieve those engaged in transporting the trunks to the altar. Meanwhile, Nox, having observed the unfolding events with keen interest, finally found an opportune moment to interject. "Are the orcs going to join us too? They'll be such a formidable force once they obtain their classes." "That's the plan," Thorian replied with a chuckle, his gaze becoming introspective. "Ventus did an exceptional job propagating my tales amongst the orcs, and Bricks managed to defuse any tension with his lively singing and dancing. Without their assistance, the integration of the orcs into our ranks would have taken considerably longer." Thorian smiled, idly scratching his furry chin. Having capable men in his company had expedited his plan significantly. Without Nox forming an unexpected camaraderie with the brown kobolds, Thorian would have hesitated to integrate the orcs into his ranks so swiftly. He required a foundation of truly loyal followers to support him before he could contemplate expansion, and the kobolds were ideal for this role. With the addition of the orcs, my stabilization plan is almost complete. Technically, the village is at a stage now that doesn't need my constant oversight, lest the whole operation crumbles. I can go and finish those dungeon quests with a small group and there shouldn't be any problem in the village. Thorian smiled wildly at the rate of progress of his plans. The only thing left for him to think about was the human hunting quest. For that one, I need the village to develop a little bit more. We should probably meet and tame the direwolves first before we invade Loxley, but more importantly, we need to upgrade the village. That way we get access to stronger walls that would stop any type of breach even with fewer fighters guarding them. To do that, we'll need Lapis and Vivax to persuade their former tribesmen to join our ranks, only then can we upgrade the village. The prospect of such a significant accomplishment on the horizon unfurled a grin on Thorian's face. Once the brown kobolds fully evolve into their new forms, Lapis and Vivax would find it easier to convince their old companions. The allure of growth, power, and security is a potent one, few in this world could deny its call. And there's the added factor of their former leader being a tyrant. With confidence in his strategy, Thorian was drawn back to his surroundings. The orcs were dutifully forming a line under Zogther's direction, while Ventus and Nox were engaged in a side conversation. Upon noticing Thorian emerge from his contemplations, Ventus approached him.
I am almost done cutting these stupid trees, what should I do after?
Thorian scratched his chin before replying, no need to complete that job, we have ample wood for now. Once we've positioned the orcs, there's a place we need to visit.
Oh, we're going outside the village?
Ventus's eyes sparkled with anticipation.
Are we going on a human hunt?
Not quite yet, Thorian dismissed with a shake of his head. We're set to clear a dungeon first. Before Ventus could probe further, Thorian's attention was drawn towards the orcs. Zogther had succeeded in arranging his kin into 2 kneeling rows, facing Thorian. Walking up to the forefront, Thorian directed his question at Zogther. Zogther, do you pledge your loyalty to me? Do you vow to wield your sword in my name, in times of war and peace alike?
Yes, I swear, Zogther confirmed, his voice soon echoed by the orcs behind him, their affirmation resonating like thunder.
We swear. Good, Thorian affirmed with a nod. From this moment forward, you are under my protection. You will serve as my spears and I your shield. Any who dare to wrong you will face my wrath, and any who dare harm your brethren will face yours. Completing his declaration, Thorian let out a deep exhale. At ease now. As the orcs rose, Thorian met Zogther's gaze. The orc's face was serious, his eyebrows knit together in a steely expression. I can't blame him. He bore witness as my flames incinerated more than half of his brethren. Reading Zogther's look, Thorian softened his own, gifting him a gentle smile. Welcome aboard, brother. You're one of us now. Seeing Thorian's placid demeanor, Zogther's taut features eased. Thank you for welcoming us in. It is I who should express gratitude for your willingness to join us, Thorian countered, sweeping his gaze over the 20 gathered orcs. Let's commemorate this moment by bestowing upon you all new abilities. At Thorian's pronouncement, surprise and curiosity etched themselves on the orcs' faces as a low murmur of speculation spread through their ranks. Are you referring to those classes Ventus mentioned? One of the orcs queried, raising his gaze to Thorian. Yes, precisely those, Thorian affirmed softly, before pivoting to lead the way. Follow me. Their initial stop prior to visiting the guilds was the village hall. Here, the orcs could become official citizens and consequently accept their 5 daily quests. Concurrently, every member of the group, Ventus and Nox included, undertook the Arendal quest, a task that had no acceptance limit. Reflecting on the brown kobolds, Thorian inquired of Melina whether they had accepted the Arendal quest. Fortuitously, the elf maiden had had the foresight to extend this opportunity to the preceding kobolds and kobolds, an offer they gratefully accepted. Upon completing their duties at the village hall, the group proceeded towards the guilds. Their first destination was the Magus Guild, where Fizzlegrin evaluated the orcs' mana affinities with his specialized device. As expected, none of the orcs demonstrated sufficient talent in this class to merit choosing it over the warrior path. Their second stop was the Priest Guild. Upon stepping into the recently constructed Priest Guild, a wave of tranquility washed over Thorian. The guild, freshly upgraded from its prior incarnation as a simple statue, emanated an atmosphere of serene spirituality. Constructed from a gentle, light wood, the walls were adorned with gracefully flowing patterns that inspired a sense of peace and contemplation. In lieu of the typical training area to the left, Thorian noted the presence of a room devoted to meditation and spiritual communion. This tranquil space was decked with plush pillows and soft carpets to facilitate comfort during the rigorous spiritual exercises. The room was thoughtfully designed to assist aspirants in discovering their divine connection, a pivotal step in the journey to becoming a priest. Marigold, the Fawn Guild master of the Priest Guild, was indeed a sight to behold. His sturdy goat-like legs, swathed in golden-brown fur, supported a robust torso garbed in vividly hued robes. His face, wreathed in curly chestnut hair, radiated constant joviality, his eyes twinkling with wisdom and humor. A pair of magnificent horns crowned his head, adding a sense of dignity to his jovial demeanor. Seemingly inseparable from his hand was a sturdy wooden mug, habitually filled with ale. A sight that confounded many, it nevertheless endeared him to most. Marigold's eccentricity was beautifully camouflaged by the depth of his wisdom, which he imparted amidst bellyful laughs and generous swigs of ale. Only 2 of the orcs demonstrated any inclination towards the priestly path, and even then, the deity they were most attuned to was a god of war. With this insight, Marigold recommended that they acquire the E-War Chantis skill, which bolstered their comrades' strength and constitution while mitigating their fatigue. As they prepared to leave the guild premises, Brix nudged Thorian's leg. Master. If it's not too bold of me, could I also attempt to become a priest? Thorian turned his gaze to the goblin, his eyebrows creased in thought. His initial instinct was to decline, as he had no desire to empower an individual he couldn't fully control. Hold on, ostracizing him merely because he's not easily manipulated would be foolish. If I decide to follow that course, it might be wiser to simply eliminate him. Thorian absently scratched his chin as he considered the situation, then locked eyes with the goblin. Brix? What is it that you truly desire? He inquired. Brix? What is it that you truly desire? Hearing Thorian's inquiry, Brix, the anxious goblin, appeared perplexed. I am not sure what you mean, Master. I just want to become a priest. That class reminded me of the Great Elder. Thorian shook his head, cool eyes fixed on Brix. That's not what I mean, he clarified. What is it that you truly desire? Be honest, Brix, as I shan't offer you infinite opportunities. Taken aback by the intense question, the goblin faltered, struggling to articulate a response. I just want to live, Master. You granted me mercy and spared my life. That's more than what I could ask for. Thorian remained silent, his penetrating gaze seeming to bore into the very essence of Brix. Sensing the impending peril, the goblin took a cautious step back, letting out a soft squeak of alarm. I just want to be like the Great Elder, Brix managed to stammer out. He does everything he wants and everyone listens to him. So that is why you want the priest class, Thorian mused, stroking his beard before breaking into a knowing smile. With me, you will see a world much bigger than you had ever imagined. If you prove yourself useful, you will have your authority, you will have your power, and you will have your riches. Thorian's voice grew low and icy as he laid out the consequences of betrayal. But should you dare to cross me or conspire behind my back, you'll wish you had perished alongside your comrades that fateful night. A weighty silence enveloped the duo, with Brix visibly shivering under Thorian's unwavering gaze. Only after an agonizing stretch of time did Brix muster the courage to take a deep breath and respond to Thorian's imposing proclamation. I will prove myself useful and I will never betray you. I am not a fool. You possess both strength and wisdom, Brix solemnly pledged. Upon hearing the goblin's reply, a smirk tugged at Thorian's lips. So, you will remain loyal as long as I am the more powerful one? Fair enough. It's my duty to remain the strongest. I, Thorian Steelblade, will never lose to anyone else. His silence was eventually broken by his measured reply. That answer is acceptable, Thorian announced. Go, request Marigold to initiate you into priesthood. At Thorian's decree, Brix exhaled a sigh of relief. As the goblin set off towards the priest guildmaster, Thorian's eyes followed him, maintaining a watchful gaze on his back. If I want to grow an empire, if I want to conquer the world, I cannot only accept the most loyal followers. It is my duty to make everyone's interests align with mine. Upon evaluating Brix's affinity, Marigold discovered a strong bond between the goblin and the deity of gold and joy. Astonishingly, the priest guildmaster had a specialized skill scroll perfectly suited for Brix, chanting fortune. While not part of the base skill set, it was known that guilds occasionally held rare abilities for purchase. The availability and quantity of these unique abilities were invariably tied to the rank of the associated guild. Chanting fortune was a skill that demanded a lengthy casting time, at least 10 seconds of vocalizing, to grant a team-wide buff that enhanced skill efficacy. Regrettably, it was incompatible with similar buffs. Once they had concluded their business at the Priest Guild, the group redirected their course to the Assassin Guild. As expected, none of the orcs exhibited any aptitude for the art of stealth and murder. Upon the completion of his assessment, Whisperwind detected Nox's presence and advanced towards him with a smile playing on his lips. A Shadowstalker, intriguing. It's been a while since I've encountered one of your kind. Hello Mr. Guildmaster, Nox nervously scratched his head and greeted. It's just been a few hours since I evolved into one. I was a night Kobold before. Whisperwind's ethereal blue eyes sparkled with fascination at Nox's explanation. Oh, intriguing. So it is possible to transition into a Shadowstalker in that manner. This does shed some light on the remarkable racial diversity in this village. Whisperwind fell into deep contemplation, his thumb absently rubbing against his smiling lips. After a brief pause, he refocused on Nox, who was tilting his head in confusion.
Well, regardless, it's commendable that you achieved such a remarkable evolution, the Assassin Guild Master chuckled. What do you think? Would you like to engage in a friendly sparring session with me? Nox's eyebrow shot up before he eagerly nodded. Sure, I'd love to. I haven't had a proper fight with someone strong since that Thrycreen. While the pair were prepping for their duel, Thorian remained a silent observer from the sidelines. Gauging the situation's progression, he chose not to interfere and simply continued to watch. Intriguing, it seems Whisperwind has taken an interest in Nox. The orcs, sensing the imminent clash, scattered to make sufficient room for the impending duel. Having personally experienced Whisperwind's formidable strength, none held any illusions about Nox's chances of victory. Even Thorian harbored no particular optimism. Guild masters are towering figures, their dominance unchallenged, likely to persist for years to come. If Nox can provide even a slight challenge, it would indeed be a significant upset. With the audience well spread out, the fight was set to begin. Yet, as the orcs initiated their chants and battle cries, they were suddenly halted by Nox's peculiar behavior. What are you up to? The Shadowkin peered at Nox, his head cocked in puzzlement. The ebony-hued kobold had settled down on the ground and was simply regarding him with a broad, cheeky grin. I watched your earlier fights, and you never laid a hand on the orcs. So I thought if you're not going to attack, then neither will I. Does that mean it's a draw? The crowd erupted in murmurs as the orcs exchanged glances and whispered amongst themselves, some questioning, is that option even possible? Even Thorian found himself taken aback by Nox's unconventional approach. This childish unpredictability, it's a talent in its own surprising way. Whisperwind, the Assassin Guild Master, responded with a light chuckle before it escalated into a full-blown cackle. Fascinating, this just keeps getting more and more intriguing. Very well, I'll indulge you. Do try to avoid getting too bruised. No sooner had the words left his lips, the Shadowkin vanished like dissipating mist. The orc spun around, unable to discern his location, but Thorian's gaze instinctively zeroed in on Nox. Nox swiftly rose to his feet as Whisperwind seemingly dissolved into the breeze. He spun around and, as he'd predicted, found the guild master materializing behind him, his towering figure casting an imposing shadow. A radiant blue light enveloped his form before concentrating into his right hand. Whisperwind shaped his fingers to resemble a dagger, the ethereal blue aura assuming a sharp, weapon-like edge. Only then did he launch his attack at Nox. Despite the Shadowstalker's impressive speed, his only option was to maneuver his body to avoid a lethal blow to the chest, resulting in his left shoulder absorbing the impact instead. Nox was hurled backward by the force of the attack, his body tumbling uncontrollably before finally coming to rest. He let out a guttural grunt of pain as he pushed off the ground with his uninjured arm, struggling to his feet. Despite his dislocated and bleeding shoulder, an unmistakable grin spread across his face. Your offense is as formidable as your defense. That's truly remarkable. There was no animosity on Nox's countenance, just pure, unadulterated admiration for the Shadowkin's combat prowess. Whisperwind's eyes gleamed with surprise, followed by a light chuckle. You're quite a character. Let's see if you maintain that bravado in the next few minutes. In keeping with his previous tactic, the guild master dissolved from sight as soon as his words were spoken. However, this time Nox sprang into action without missing a beat. By the time Whisperwind materialized in his original location, Nox had already darted to safety. Their encounter evolved into a high-speed game of cat and mouse, a spectacle only a few were capable of following. Thorian utilized his decades of experience to anticipate their next moves, while Ventus displayed extraordinary instincts and keen visual perception. The rest of the orcs could only watch in astonished confusion. The relentless pursuit persisted, with Whisperwind barely grazing Nox or inflicting minor wounds each time. It wasn't until over a minute had passed that Whisperwind managed to corner his elusive quarry. Hovering above Nox, he readied his attack, his hand morphed into a claw and his entire body glowing blue. Seeing the luminescent aura, Nox couldn't suppress a smile. Shadow's Caress. A dark amalgamation of shadows engulfed the guildmaster's form. While Nox had previously used this skill for its enhancement effect, it also held another utility, temporarily blinding the enemy. In a split second, Nox sprang into action, delivering a spinning back kick squarely to Whisperwind's face. The impact sent the Shadowkin sprawling onto the ground. The battlefield fell into a stunned silence as the onlookers processed the extraordinary turn of events. Even Thorian's eyes were wide in surprise as he witnessed the unexpected upset unfolding before him. Nox! At that shout, the orcs erupted into ecstatic cheering, their voices echoing Nox's name with unbridled joy and exuberance. They immediately flocked to the triumphant Black Kobold, hoisting him onto their shoulders before tossing him up into the air. With each catch and throw, the orcs chanted Nox's name in rhythm, while the jubilant Shadowstalker laughed heartily. After several minutes of raucous celebration, Nox finally returned to the ground. Despite the pain in his shoulder and the numerous bruises scattered across his body, he made no effort to halt the orcs' festivities, choosing instead to embrace the exhilaration of the moment. Once the crowd of orcs had dispersed, Nox was finally able to see the guildmaster. Much to his surprise, Whisperwind bore a broad smile, exhibiting no hint of humiliation over his supposed defeat at the hands of the Shadowstalker. "You're a quick one, aren't you?" he complimented. "You discern my weaknesses rather rapidly, which is almost embarrassing on my part." Feeling somewhat awkward, Nox chuckled and scratched his head. "No, I wouldn't say I'm smart. I just had an idea and thought it would be great if it worked. And somehow it did." At Nox's modest retort, Whisperwind joined in the laughter, "And you're impressively swift too, nearly on par with a Shadowstalker champion." He then fell into contemplative silence before proposing an offer. "What do you say about working for me?" "Working for you? How does that work?" Nox queried, his brow furrowed in confusion. Even Thorian, who had been observing from a distance, was intrigued. He had not expected a guildmaster to show this degree of interest. "Well, you see," a Whisperwind began, "these skill scrolls don't materialize from thin air. I have to personally inscribe them. Once you've fully mastered a class skill, you can inscribe them with the appropriate tools. Your task would simply be to do this for a few hours daily, and in exchange, I will provide you with arcane coins." "Oh, interesting," Nox responded, his voice imbued with excitement. His expression quickly shifted to one of solemnity as he looked downward. "But I don't have any skill that I've completely mastered. Even backstab that I've had for the longest time is only about 80%. "That's perfectly fine," a Whisperwind reassured, shaking his head and laughing lightly. "As long as you concentrate on mastering that skill for the rest of the day, you should be able to achieve 100% proficiency. And don't trouble yourself about the other skills. Since they're racial ones, you won't be able to inscribe them." Nox's spirits lifted at Whisperwind's encouraging words. But before committing, he turned to Thorian, asking, "Hey, Thorian, what do you think? Should I go for it? I could purchase more skills with the arcane coins." "That doesn't seem like a bad idea," Thorian replied thoughtfully. "If I were in your shoes, I'd seize the opportunity." The mention of his shoes caused the Shadowstalker to furrow his eyebrows, but sensing Thorian's endorsement, his face lit up. Turning back to Whisperwind, he nodded emphatically, "Yes, I want to work for you." The Shadowkin returned a faint smile before pivoting away. "Good, follow me so we can finalize the official paperwork." As they made their way towards the guild, Ventus, who was seated next to Thorian, clicked his tongue in mild annoyance. "Lucky Nox. He always gets the best opportunities while I'm stuck chopping trees for 4 hours. Thorian fought back a chuckle, deciding to ignore Ventus. He instead surveyed the rowdy crowd of orcs who were engaged in spirited conversation and laughter. They were reliving Nox's adventures as if they were their own. Nox really has the ability to make everyone like him. I guess it's that childish naivety that is so endearing. After Nox had formally become the Assassin Guild's inaugural employee, the group made their way to the Warrior Guild. Rumblestone, as usual, appeared both delighted and self-satisfied about the growing number of warriors under his guild. While the financial benefits from so many members buying skills were undeniably beneficial, his ego was soaring. After all, he was currently the master of the village's most populous guild. The warrior orcs were divided into 3 factions. Of the 18, 5 selected the taunting shout skill, 6 went for charge, and the remaining 7 chose power strike. In general, despite their lack of long-range damage support, the group exhibited a commendable diversity and synergy as a warrior unit. In close combat, they promised to be a formidable force. Having concluded their guild tour, Thorian ushered the band of orcs to their next assignment, the Southern Gate. As they neared their post, the distant sounds of battle became discernible. As Thorian ascended the wall, he could see a trio engaged in a fierce struggle against a horde of thumpalopes, aided by a priest in the rear. The priest, similar to the one at the northern gate, bore silver-white fur marked with moon tattoos all over his body. Bathing the 2 magi and the warrior in a steady stream of buffs and heals, the trio seemed invincible. Observing the combat squad, Thorian immediately spotted something intriguing. If it was a girl? At first glance, it wasn't noticeable, so Thorian hadn't picked up on it earlier. But upon closer inspection, Ifrit's feminine attributes became rather discernible. Thorian quickly averted his gaze from the flame kobold, shaking his head. We need to acquire some gear soon, preferably robes and armors. His eyes then found Saxum, who was positioned mid-range between the priest and the front-liners, Ifrit and Inley. While the pair engaged in frontline combat, Saxum provided cover fire with his rock bullet and also utilized his new skill. After a brief chant, the ground beneath the Thumpalope's feet would shift and latch onto their ankles, effectively immobilizing them. Deprived of their greatest strength speed, the oversized rabbits were virtually sitting ducks. Like wingless birds, the Thumpalopes were lambs awaiting the slaughter. Ifrit, employing her combustion touch spell, set many of the giant rabbits ablaze. Inley joined the fray, wreaking havoc with his axe. In no time, the group of rabbits was efficiently dispatched. As the skirmish concluded, the orcs opened the gates and stepped outside. Thorian gave his orders. From this point forward, you're responsible for guarding the southern gate. Engage wisely in your hunts, and avoid any enemy you're uncertain of defeating. In the face of such a foe, retreat immediately and dispatch people to the other gates for backup. Understood? Thank you for your leniency, my lord, Zogther responded with a slight bow. Raise your head, Thorian instructed. As they locked eyes, Thorian scanned the group of orcs, his gaze finally landing back on Zogther. These men are under your command. Do not squander this fresh opportunity you've been granted. The orc looked earnestly at Thorian. I won't, my lord. Good, Thorian acknowledged, his features softening. Looking around, he noticed the goblin engaged in conversation with a few orcs at the rear. Bricks, come here, Thorian called out, much to the goblin's surprise. The green creature bid farewell to the orcs and hurriedly scampered toward Thorian. Yes, master. Do you need me for something? Take those inside, Thorian gestured towards the numerous Thumpalope carcasses strewn across the field. They'll serve as our food reserves. Right away, master, the goblin nodded before scampering off towards the fallen rabbits. Realizing that the task would take an age for Bricks to complete alone, Thorian turned back to Zogther and suggested, could you assign some of your men to assist him? At this rate, he'll take an eternity to finish. Immediately, my lord, Zogther responded, before addressing the orc warriors. Jabbath, Flameth, go and assist the goblin. Upon hearing their leader's command, the two orcs jumped into action. While Bricks struggled with a single Thumpalope, each orc managed to hoist 3 under their arms. Meanwhile, the quartet of kobolds, who had been guarding the gate earlier, approached Thorian. Are the orcs with us now, king? Ifrit inquired with interest. Yes, they are, Thorian responded with a grin. They've all pledged their allegiance to me. They're your comrades now. As expected of our king, Saxum lightly chuckled. All races seek to serve under you. They must have witnessed the same might you exhibited in the cave when you became our king. As Saxum and Ifrit lavished Thorian with praises and laughter, Inley and the priest exchanged wary glances, observing the orcs. Finally, the priest turned back to Thorian and asked, can we trust them, my king? They're loyal enough, Thorian reassured. But always remain vigilant. If you notice anything out of the ordinary, inform me immediately. I will be sure to do so, my king, the priest responded, punctuating his assurance with a respectful bow. Oh, forget about that, Gifford interjected with a laugh. Now that the orcs are here, what's our next move, king? Should we stay and assist them? Thorian regarded the scene thoughtfully before replying. I need you to remain here for a while, Ifrit. The orcs aren't accustomed to guarding the wall, so your guidance would be invaluable. Oh, can I be their leader? Ifrit's eyes sparkled at the thought. You can act as their advisor, Thorian responded with a sigh. Coordinate with Zogther and inform him that you'll be assisting them by my directive. Advisor, leader, it's all the same. Ifrit exclaimed, jumping with enthusiasm before turning to approach the orcs. Thank you, king. You're the best. Observing the flame kobold's nonchalant attitude, Thorian couldn't suppress his concern. He turned to the warrior, instructing, Inley, could you please stay here and ensure everything proceeds smoothly? It would be my honor, my king, Inley responded, bowing slightly. As Inley prepared to trail after Ifrit, Thorian added one final directive, maintain vigilance and report any developments you find noteworthy. Inley nodded silently in response, then strode off to follow Ifrit, leaving Thorian standing with the priest and Saxum. Meanwhile, Ventus and Nox, who had been conversing nearby, joined the trio upon noticing Thorian had finished speaking. First, we're headed to the village hall, Thorian declared, casting a glance at Saxum and the priest. You both need to undertake the Erendel quest. Erendel? Saxum echoed, a puzzled expression on his face.
What is that?
You will know soon enough. Upon Thorian's announcement, the group of 5 proceeded back to the hall, where Saxum and the priest accepted their new quest. Afterward, Thorian led the group outside the village. As they vaulted over the wall, Nox couldn't contain his curiosity.
What's our next move?
He asked. Thorian looked back, a smile playing on his lips. It's time to delve into some dungeons. 11 hours ago. Grandpa, I'm scared, cried the small voice in Robert's ear. Loxley, typically shrouded in the quiet darkness of night, was now ablaze, an unnatural illumination reflecting off the slick, rain-drenched streets. Folktales had come alive in the most horrific of ways as creatures of nightmares clawed their way into reality. Chasing Robert and his grandchild were the goblins, snarling and snapping with an eager anticipation of their prey. Little Rue, held tight in Robert's grip, trembled against him, each shudder a poignant reminder of their grim situation. The old man wished he could spare the breath to soothe the child's fears, but each gasp was a precious commodity, a lifeline he dare not waste. The goblins, a malicious glint in their eyes, were hot on his trail, their shrieks reverberating off the cobbled lanes, promising pain and a grisly end. Could I have chosen differently? The thought gripped Robert as he reflected on his decision to abandon the group of mysterious strangers at the plaza. But a mental image of the sinister woman emerging from the building sent shivers down his spine, reaffirming his decision. With renewed determination, he shook off the regret and pressed onward. His focus was on survival, his and Little Rue's. He wouldn't let the terror of Loxley claim them tonight. Foregoing contemplation of the past, Robert committed his full focus to the present nightmare. Suddenly spotting monsters emerging from the front as well, his eyes darted to a fairly spacious alley on his right. Clutching the little boy tighter and grinding his teeth in determination, he swiftly maneuvered into the lane. As he rounded the corner, his blood ran cold. A dead end. Panic bloomed in his chest, prompting him to pound urgently on the lone door to his left, a beacon of potential safety. No matter how desperately he hammered on the cold, unyielding wood, silence greeted him from the other side. Gods in heaven, have mercy on us. Robert's silent plea hung in the chilly air, answered only by the shrill cries of the encroaching goblins. Without a glance backwards, he gently placed Rue in the alley's corner before finally daring to confront his grim fate. The goblins had closed in, a horde of 5 ghastly green figures grinning grotesquely, crooked teeth on full display. One creature, its eyes gleaming wickedly, drew a menacing dagger, poised to strike the elderly man. As despair threatened to consume Robert, a glint from the corner of his eye offered a glimmer of hope. A discarded piece of lumber lay nearby. Driven by desperation, the old man seized the makeshift weapon, gripping it with the fierce resolve of a swordsman.
What am I doing?
Robert's hands trembled, his hold on the makeshift weapon tenuous at best. It was apparent to him, as well as the goblin leading the pack, that he could not muster a decent swing. The creature responded with a grotesque laughter, a cacophonous sound of delight at the desperate spectacle unfolding before them. Its cronies joined in, their wicked cackles echoing ominously in Robert's ears. Gloating over, the lead goblin lunged at Robert, its dagger held high. Fear tightened its grip, freezing Robert in his tracks, his eyes instinctively squeezing shut in anticipation of the impending strike. As he whispered a last-ditch plea to any deity that might listen, a sudden thought struck him. With no alternatives left, Robert did the only thing he could, he trusted his instincts and opened his mouth. Power strike. No sooner had he spoken the words than a surge of energy rushed from the core of his being into his hands, and then into the wooden plank. The makeshift weapon began to glow a brilliant blue, startling the charging goblin and leaving Robert himself bewildered. With an inarticulate cry ripped from the depth of his soul, he swung. His movements were clumsy and graceless, filled with glaring flaws. But raw power needed no finesse. Robert's now luminous weapon viciously cleaved through the goblin with raw power alone, tearing skin and sinew alike. The force of his swing ripped through the creature from neck to midriff, laying it open like a roughly handled doll. Level up! The old man's breath came in ragged, shallow gasps. Yet, despite his exhaustion, he was riveted by the fading luminescent screen before him. As the glow disappeared, a rejuvenating energy seemed to replenish his depleted strength. The sharp edge of his adrenaline-laced focus began to blur, allowing him to register new voices, previously unheard amidst the chaos. Charge! The command rang out, clear and authoritative, from a young man astride a powerful steed. A squadron of 7 knights answered the call, 2 of them thundering forward on their horses. Their lances, poised for attack, ensured that any goblin fortunate enough to avoid being trampled would face the deadly tip of their weapon. As Robert's gaze fell upon the young knight sitting atop his horse outside the alley, recognition dawned on him. He knew exactly who this commanding figure was.
Is that Sir Tristan Ravenwood? What is the prince doing here? A solemn-faced knight rode up beside the prince, urgency lacing his voice. Tristan, we must make haste. If we're surrounded by those creatures here, we'll find ourselves in serious trouble. We'll move immediately, Prince Tristan responded decisively, his eyes falling upon Robert and the young boy. But first, we must ensure the safety of these 2. Observing the elderly man and the child huddled in the corner, the knight nodded in agreement. Oh, indeed. This city has plunged into chaos, and safe havens are few and far between. With their decision made, Prince Tristan steered his horse towards Robert. Dismounting gracefully, he addressed the older man, Sir, would you accompany me on my steed? It would be safer than remaining on foot. Robert was momentarily taken aback by the prince's gracious offer. Stunned, he managed to stammer, it would be my honor, sir. But can I ask you to take little Rue too? He is just a kid. Rest assured, sir. I will take the child, responded the previously solemn knight, moving to scoop up Rue and secure him safely in front of him on his horse. Despite their kindness, Robert still wore a look of surprise. Prince Tristan offered him reassurance, do not worry. Oswald will protect your grandson with his life, I swear it. With a bewildered nod, Robert found himself astride the horse beside the young prince. If encountering a sentient, white-furred creature was a surreal nightmare, the current turn of events had an uncanny resemblance to a dream. Tristan Ravenwood and Oswald Strongheart? I'd heard the rumors, but to see them in action. The group navigated the chaotic streets, with Tristan and Oswald anchoring the formation, protected by the other knights. On occasion, a creature would break through their defenses, but the duo, despite guarding an elderly man and a small child, dispatched them with practiced ease. We must secure the mansion, Oswald counseled. Once it's safe, we can coordinate rescue efforts. With his hand stroking his chin in thought, Tristan agreed, you're correct. Our efforts need structure. Haphazard actions won't do us any good. Yet, as he spoke, he turned to Robert, his voice gentle with curiosity. If you'll pardon my question, sir, how did you manage to defeat that monster? I distinctly remember seeing that piece of wood in your hand glowing blue. Startled, Robert stammered before responding, to be honest, I can't quite explain it myself. It was almost like magic? Magic? Tristan's eyebrows furrowed, skepticism shadowing his features.
In what way?
Robert glanced downward, gathering his thoughts before launching into his explanation. We were at the plaza with my grandson around midnight when the earth quaked, and these enormous statues suddenly appeared. When I touched one, I received this magic spell. His explanation was tentative, and he was acutely aware of how fantastical it sounded. However, Prince Tristan listened attentively, his eyes never leaving Robert's face. Once the old man finished his account, Tristan turned to Oswald and stated decisively, we need to change our plans. First, we will visit this plaza and investigate. I had a feeling you would say that, Oswald replied with a grin. Perhaps we might find some answers there, determine whether the gods truly have abandoned us. With their new course charted, the group, comprised of 9 knights and 2 civilians, spurred their horses towards the plaza. Their encounters with the monstrous goblins were frequent, their numbers staggering. Yet, the skilled knights dispatched smaller groups with ease. When faced with larger hordes, they chose discretion over valor, skirting around the threat. Upon reaching the plaza, the veracity of Robert's account was impossible to ignore. The 4 giant statues were a commanding presence, catching everyone's attention. Some gazed in wonder, while others shrank back in fear. Oh, if it isn't our esteemed knights! Welcome, welcome. A new voice joined the scene. The familiar voice caused a shiver to ripple down Robert's spine. Looking past Tristan, he saw Nalia, the woman in green, emerging from the center of the plaza with her entourage. As their eyes locked, Robert immediately averted his gaze. Oh, if it isn't dear Robert as well. I was so concerned when you vanished earlier. I feared the worst, she chimed, her voice dripping with false concern. Do you know her? Tristan whispered, his voice barely audible to Robert alone. Not really, the old man responded, shaking his head. She was simply another person in the plaza with her group at midnight. When everything went into chaos, I ran away with little Rue, leaving them behind.
Robert was about to end his explanation there, but after a pause, he added, I didn't want to stay near them. There was something unsettling about them. Tristan nodded solemnly before urging his horse forward. I've heard tell of magical happenings in this area, he began, his voice filled with feigned cheer. He gestured to the towering statues. Are these colossi a divine gift, perhaps? Indeed, they are a gift from the gods, Nalia responded, her eyes reflecting the grandeur of the statues. Her gaze swept across the plaza before settling back on Tristan. However, once these divine gifts descend to earth, they become mankind's property. Tristan's eyes frosted over at her words, but her smile never wavered. Before he could reply, she added an intriguing proposition, Your lordship, might you accept a gift from me? It could grant you power beyond your wildest dreams, enough to protect all whom you hold dear. Tristan studied Nalia intently for several silent moments before responding, And what if I decline your gift? Ah, but my lord Tristan, Nadia began, her tone as gentle as before but carrying an underlying threat. In our world, where gods bestow gifts and monsters roam free, can we truly afford to refuse an opportunity for strength? Declining a gift isn't just a rejection of power, but perhaps an acceptance of weakness and all the dangers it implies. Insolence! One of the knights bellowed, breaking the tense silence. How dare you speak such words before the prince? Your tongue should be severed for this transgression. Just as the knight was about to lunge forward, Tristan stayed him with a hand. Calm yourself, Sir John. Her words have caused me no offense. Yet the prince's frosty tone contradicted his words, piquing Robert's curiosity. As he surveyed Nalia's group and the crowd beyond, he noted a throng of people filling the plaza. However, contrary to the fear and uncertainty one might expect in such a post-apocalyptic landscape, their eyes reflected an unwavering conviction. Am I imagining things? What truly startled Robert, making him question his own senses, was the eerie red glint that shimmered in the eyes of these men and women. Thorian assumed the lead, carving a path through the verdant forest, and the group fell naturally into a synchronized march. Nox, ever nimble and spry, acted as a scout, constantly a few steps ahead. Ventus and Saxum took turns securing the flanks and trailing edge, their sturdy forms cutting an imposing figure. Positioned in the heart of the formation, the priest, the group's vital lifeline, was protected by all. Thorian, with a keen eye, watched over both flanks. The forest's inhabitants soon made their presence known. Thumpelopes and Rebarians greeted them first, relatively harmless monsters that were good for honing skills. The goblins posed a greater challenge with their sheer numbers, yet they were more than manageable. Chaskas and Thrycrenes introduced an element of thrill, their fallen forms strewn along the trail marking the group's relentless advance. As they ventured deeper and the forest's canopy thickened, obscuring the light, a cluster of peculiar mushrooms came into view, exuding a soft, alluring luminescence. A funglite lurcap, Thorian uttered, his voice barely rising above a whisper yet loud enough for his companions to hear. His eyes narrowed, captivated yet cautious as he observed the enchanting glow of the fungi.
Fung what?
Ventus echoed, his brows furrowing as he gazed at the odd sight. They look like harmless mushrooms to me, King. That's the point, Thorian explained, they attract their victims with their light. Be careful not to gaze too long. Their lure is hypnotic. But how do they attack? The priest asked, curiosity getting the better of him. Thorian gestured at the ground surrounding the mushroom. Mycelial grasp. If you get too close, they'll trap you. And they're capable of releasing a spore cloud causing several kinds of mental ailments. As if to demonstrate, Saxum, eager to test the waters, tossed a stone near the closest lurcap. In response, the ground quivered as mycelial threads erupted around the stone, latching onto it and squeezing until it cracked. A small cloud of toxic spores burst from the mushroom's cap. Clever plant, Saxum mused, or is it an animal? Thorian shook his head. Doesn't matter what it is. It's dangerous. Keep your distance. With newfound caution, the group made their way around the lurcap colony. They moved as quietly as they could, careful to avoid triggering the forest's hidden menace. Time swiftly passed as the group adhered to Thorian's guidance. With his expertise, the creatures inhabiting the forest seemed akin to mere child's play. As long as they heeded his directions, which they dutifully did, they had nothing to fear. The forest hummed with a symphony of life and mystery. But as they ventured deeper into the dense woodland, an ethereal murmur began to intertwine with the natural orchestra. A flutter of recognition raced through Thorian's heart, he knew this spectral harmony. The whispers of the trees. They were near.
What is this?
Nox finally inquired. I've been hearing these weird sounds in my head.
Me too.
Ventus joined in, voicing his concern. It feels like my head is about to split. They are the whispering trees, Thorian enlightened them. And refrain from talking excessively, these are the entities that will guide us. As they progressed deeper into their exploration, the whispers took on a more tangible form. No longer a vexing whisper at the periphery of their consciousness, they became a chorus of voices just beyond comprehension. The murmurs flirted with their minds, conveying a sense of otherworldly hospitality, and yet, beneath it all, lay an unequivocal caution. Suddenly, the whispers crescendoed to a near-deafening level. As Thorian and his group neared an overgrown archway, cradled by the intertwined boughs of ancient trees and adorned with the soft glow of age-old runes, the voices fell silent. A shiver of anticipation rippled through the group. The leaves rustled as a wind that was not there began to blow, and the whispers returned, this time sharp and clear as a bell. I'm the heart of the home, yet hard as stone. I can be warm and inviting, yet I can't be alone. Food becomes feast when I'm put to the test. Without me, a house would not have its zest.
What am I?
A profound silence blanketed the forest. The riddle, hanging in the air, seemed to mute the very essence of the world. They gazed at the luminescent gateway, its cryptic power thrumming in sync with the reverberation of the words. The unuttered threat of retribution for an incorrect answer loomed over them like an impending guillotine, the blade poised ominously above their collective existence. As Thorian fully absorbed the riddle, a smile graced his features. This should have posed no challenge, he thought, the men under William should have effortlessly solved this as well. You are the hearth. His voice echoed through the hushed forest, the woodland itself seeming to lean in to catch his response. Then, a palpable stillness befell them all. The hush deepened, the whispers dwindling to silence. The suspense was unbearable, a string pulled tight to the brink of snapping. Suddenly, a soft sound filled the air. It was the sound of laughter. A deep, rich laughter, full of mirth and joy, and then the whispering trees began to hum. It was a deep, resonant sound, filling the forest, reverberating through the very soil beneath their feet. Creepy, Ventus murmured. A tree that laughs? This is too crazy for me. The archaic runes engraved on the archway erupted into a brilliant display, a detonation of luminescence that cast elongated, cavorting shadows around the group. The entwined branches of the archway trembled, then slowly, unyieldingly began to part, unveiling a concealed path beyond.
Should we go inside?
Nox inquired with apprehension, his gaze directed at Thorian. The rest of the group mirrored his action, their eyes converging on their leader. No, not yet, Thorian decisively shook his head. This dungeon is too hard for us currently. We will go back to it later when we are stronger. Heh, I have never seen you back down from a challenge before, King, Ventus remarked, a touch of curiosity in his tone as he turned his gaze back to the now revealed sanctuary entrance. Just what could be inside that would make you say that? Ventus, Saxum admonished the wind Kobloid with a stern look. Watch your tongue. There are elves, Thorian expounded. Corrupted elves, and a single arrow from their quiver could pierce through the five of us. Each member of the group looked at Thorian with a mix of disbelief and awe. His words were challenging to digest, yet given their credible source, they found it hard to refute them. After consulting his journal, Thorian gestured for the group to follow. We should depart now. We've completed the quest, and there's a considerably less challenging dungeon we can explore. Guided by Thorian, the group turned back, retracing their footsteps. As they distanced themselves from the dungeon, the illumination from the archway receded, and the entrance to the sanctuary closed once more. Erendil's sanctuary was nestled on the western flank of the village, neatly situated between Wolvendale and Loxley. However, the dungeon that Thorian intended to conquer was located on the opposing side. Navigating an extensive detour, the group persisted in their perilous exploration. In addition to the creatures they had already encountered, they stumbled upon new, intriguing inhabitants of the forest. Most noteworthy among these were the Shelltrotters. These fascinating hybrids of horses and armadillos stood as tall as the most formidable war horses when on all fours and could trample any adversary with their fortified hooves. Yet it was when they curled up into a sphere that they turned decidedly more lethal. The enormous scales on their backs, sharp as steel yet remarkably pliable, facilitated a terrifying rolling speed. Fortunately, Ventus's gale slash was sufficiently potent to penetrate their defenses and slice through their scales, providing Thorian a clear target for his combustion spell. And while the Shelltrotters might have boasted impressive speed, they were no match for Nox, who darted from one tree to another with an agility that would put any monkey to shame. Thus, despite consuming a significant amount of time, the group managed to tackle the small squadron of armored horses. Good thing the pack did not have an evolved one amongst them. A magma stone or thunderbolt charger would have been difficult to escape from. Thorian couldn't suppress a wry smile as he reflected on their recent encounter. However, now was not the time for nostalgia, as their destination was close at hand. The dense forest ahead began to thin, their pace reducing as they caught sight of an immense tree towering over its neighbors. Its knotted roots sprawled outwards, and a large hollow at the tree's base served as an entrance, emanating a foreboding aura. "That's our destination," Thorian murmured, his red fur reflecting the faint glow of the sun's rays filtering through the foliage. He stared at the dungeon entrance, his fiery eyes ablaze with unyielding determination. "Looks creepy," Nox commented from beside him, peering towards the hollow with wide, curious eyes. The black-furred kobold was always brimming with excitement, even in the face of danger. Ventus gave a sharp exhale, puffing out his chest.
"Well, whatever's in there, we can handle it."
The wind kobold radiated a youthful aura of courage, ready to prove himself once more. As Thorian approached the entrance of the dungeon, a floating screen appeared in front of him. "Congratulations, you are the first to discover the small-scale dungeon, Verdant Labyrinth. You will receive double the rewards and a higher chance for extra rewards if you clear it. Choose the difficulty layer you wish to enter. Choose the difficulty layer you wish to enter. Difficulty power recommendation. Layer I party of 5 at peak initiate level. Layer 2 party of 5 at first advancement. Layer 3 party of 5 at peak first advancement. Layer 4 party of 5 at second advancement. Layer V party of 5 at peak second advancement." Surveying the screen floating before him, a smile tugged at Thorian's lips. As he turned his attention back to his comrades, it became apparent that they too were engrossed in a similar panel.
"What do you all think?"
Thorian posed the question.
"Which difficulty level should we opt for?" "I say let's go for the 5th layer."
Ventus proposed with palpable enthusiasm. However, before he could justify his suggestion, Saxum landed a gentle punch on his head. "You really need to learn when to keep quiet."
"Ouch. Why'd you hit me?"
Ventus protested, grabbing Saxum by the shoulders.
"It was the king who asked for my opinion. Why do you have to butt in?"
Thorian and the priest shook their heads at the childish banter while Nox was laughing heartily on the side.
"It was my mistake to ask," Thorian grumbled.
"We'll opt for the 2nd layer. It should provide us a good baseline to understand the layout of this dungeon. From a technical standpoint, those recommendations assume a well-geared squad. But this shouldn't pose too much of a problem. But I was hoping for a challenge." Ignoring Ventus's grumbles, Thorian issued his command. "Since we can't yet form an official party recognized by the system, we'll need to hold hands before selecting the difficulty. Otherwise, we risk being teleported to different locations."
"Teleportation?"
Nox's eyes lit up at the prospect.
"Now, that's a sight I'd love to see." "How would that work?"
Saxum asked with interest. "You will see soon enough," Thorian said, spreading his arms. "Now take each other's hands." Following his command, the group took each other by the hand before Thorian chose the 2nd layer of the dungeon. With all hands linked, Thorian turned his attention back to the screen and firmly selected Layer 2. The moment he did, a radiant light enveloped the group, causing them to instinctively shut their eyes. Ventus couldn't help but give a startled yelp, his grip on Saxum's hand tightening. A sensation of weightlessness swept over them, like they were being lifted off their feet. Then, just as suddenly as it began, the sensation stopped and the brilliant light faded. They opened their eyes to find themselves standing in a vastly different environment than the forest they'd left behind. The enormous tree that housed the dungeon was even more towering from the inside, its inner walls glowing faintly with the bioluminescence of countless fungi and moss.
"Everyone all right?"
Thorian asked, scanning his companions. The others nodded, still a bit disoriented but otherwise unharmed. "Then let's proceed with caution," he added, releasing the hands of Nox and Saxum. Nox, being very energetic, stepped forward with a grin.
"All right. Let's see what this dungeon's got."
"No need to rush," Thorian admonished, but there was a smile playing on his lips. He was just as eager as the rest of them to clear this new dungeon. As they moved from the landing area, they entered the first challenge, the fungal fields, Thorian noted. The spectacle that unfolded before them was unquestionably surreal. The fungi, in myriad colors, shapes, and sizes, each glowed with its own distinctive luminescent hue.
However, the beauty of the spectacle was rapidly eclipsed by the rustling noises emanating from the towering mushrooms. Suddenly, from the corner of his eye, Ventus spotted movement.
There, he pointed.
Emerging from the base of a large mushroom were several large beetles, their exoskeletons shimmering with the reflected bioluminescent light. Armored beetles? Tough creatures. While Thorian was still occupied observing the newcomers, Nox was already in motion, his palpable excitement bubbling over. "I got this," he declared, surging forward with a gust of wind that stirred up loose leaves and pebbles in his wake.
"Saxum, slow him down,"
Thorian called out. The Earth Magus quickly cast his root spell, trying to ensnare Nox, but the Shadowstalker was too fast. Nox approached the armored beetles, axe in hand, but as he brought it down, it merely clanged off the beetle's exoskeleton. The beetles retaliated in unison, their sharp mandibles snapping at the Black Kobold. "Nox, run!" At Thorian's commanding shout, the Shadowstalker leaped into action, sprinting away from the beetle swarm with breakneck speed. However, despite Nox's swiftness, the beetles retaliated with a volley of spikes, effectively blocking all his potential escape routes.
"Gale Slash!"
Just as the lethal barrage was about to impale the Black Kobold, a burst of wind cleaved through the spikes, deflecting them off their intended course. Ventus continued his relentless assault of gale slashes, the blasts of wind colliding with and deflecting the spikes away from Nox. The Shadowstalker darted around the beetles, attempting to identify an opening. Concurrently, Thorian stepped forward, his fingers wreathed in flickering flames. "Stand back," he called out before thrusting his hands forward, a stream of fire spewing from his palm. The beetles screeched as their exoskeletons heated up, the creatures disoriented by the sudden heat. In their frantic attempts to escape, they revealed their vulnerable underbellies. "Now, Nox!" Thorian shouted. With a grunt of acknowledgement, the Shadowstalker dashed forward, his swift movements barely visible. His blade whistled through the air as he danced among the beetles, slashing at their exposed underbellies. Each stroke of his axe was precise and deadly, leaving fatal wounds in the soft flesh of the beetles. However, even with their impeccable teamwork, a stray spike managed to graze Thorian. A sharp yelp escaped him, his movements faltering for a moment. But before the beetles could seize this chance, Saxum stepped forward, his hands glowing a soft green. "Earthen grasp," he murmured, slamming his hands onto the ground. Instantaneously, the earth beneath them softened and shaped itself, ensnaring the beetles who were grounded. With the creatures immobilized, Nox could navigate with greater ease, slicing through the captive monsters effortlessly. Still, the wound Thorian had received needed to be tended to. The priest, standing a safe distance away, raised his hand, a soft, silvery light emanating from it. With a small intonation, the moonlight stretched out and enveloped Thorian. The flame kobold's grimace of pain eased as the healing magic stitched his wound together. With their combined efforts, the party swiftly dealt with the beetle threat. "Level up." Seeing the familiar pop up, Thorian let out a smile. "I forgot I was close to leveling up again." Display panel. Level, 12/30 EXP, 34/1350. After checking his level, Thorian immediately closed his stat screen. His eyes then shifted toward the Shadowstalker. "Nox, you shouldn't get too excited."
"Understood?"
Thorian said, his voice stern but not unkind. With a grin, Nox rubbed the back of his head, a sheepish look on his face. "Sorry about that, guys," he admitted, glancing over at Thorian. "I got a bit carried away there. Won't happen again." Thorian nodded, his stern expression softening. "This isn't the same as just killing anything that moves when guarding the wall. We need to work as a team to keep each other safe." The rest of the group shared a look, the smiles on their faces betraying their relief. While the battle had been an unexpected challenge, their victory was a testament to their strength as a team. No one was seriously injured, and they'd even leveled up. "All right, let's take a moment here," Thorian suggested, sitting down on a nearby mushroom. "We need to discuss our tactics. Nox, you need to remember to let Saxum and Ventus control the battlefield first. You're our ace, our finisher. We can't afford you going berserk from the start." Ventus, sitting opposite of Thorian, chuckled. "Yeah, listen to the king. You nearly gave us a heart attack." Surprisingly, even Saxum concurred. "I generally never agree with this blockhead, but you nearly ended up dead. I'm unsure where this idiot discovered such reflexes to come to your rescue."
"Hey! Who are you calling an idiot?"
Choosing to ignore their squabble, Thorian directed his attention to the priest. "You did an excellent job with the healing.
However, remember to also utilize your other skills when appropriate. Ventus, Saxum, your battlefield control was outstanding. We should maintain that level of coordination. After ensuring that everyone understood their roles, Thorian stood, the rest of the group following suit. They made their way out of the fungal fields, Ventus and Saxum leading the way, their senses alert to any potential danger. As they crossed the fungal fields, the path they were led to by the dungeon showed a clear distinction of areas. As they stepped into the second area, the thorn thicket, they felt a significant change in the atmosphere. The dense vegetation and the twisting ivy gave the place a claustrophobic feeling, and the quiet rustle of the leaves was a constant reminder of the lurking dangers. They moved cautiously, Ventus's wind gust violently pushing aside the poisonous ivy, while Saxum kept an eye out for any movement in the dense thicket. Nox remained at the back, his gaze shifting from one side to the other, his hand never leaving the grip of his axe. Suddenly, Saxum raised his hand, bringing the group to a halt. His eyes narrowed at a particular patch of ivy, while he conjured a rock bullet with his finger. The moment his magic came into contact with the vegetation, an ominous creature revealed itself. The giant vine shot out with a feral hunger, displaying fangs that gleamed threateningly under the luminescence of nearby fungi. Ventus was quick to react, a gust of wind sending the vine flying back. Nox stepped forward, his blade slashing through the air, and with a single, swift movement, cut the vine into two. The vine fell to the ground, writhing and hissing until it eventually stopped moving.
Avorachos vine, hu?
A quiet sigh of relief went through the group. They were in the thick of it now, their every step leading them deeper into the challenges of the verdant labyrinth.
Let's keep moving,
Thorian said, his voice low but filled with resolve. Stay vigilant, and we'll make it through. The vibrant foliage of the thorn thicket closed around them like a natural fortress, the glow from the bioluminescent fungi casting an eerie green light on their faces. Thorian could feel a tingle in the air, a slight increase in the magical energy that swirled around them. I don't like this place, the priest muttered, his eyes darting around the thicket. Too many places for something to hide. Thorian couldn't help but agree, his eyes scanning the undergrowth for signs of movement. Stay close, he warned, his voice barely above a whisper. The thicket was silent as they delved deeper, the only sound being their footsteps and the occasional rustle of leaves as Ventus blew a gust of wind to clear the way. The air grew thicker, the smell of damp earth mixed with the bitter tang of venomous ivy making it hard to breathe. As they continued, a strange chill crept down Thorian's spine. He froze in his tracks, his eyes scanning the surrounding foliage. Everything was still. Too still. Something's wrong, he murmured. The others halted as well, their eyes wide and alert. Then, from the corner of his eye, he saw a flicker of movement. Thornstalker, he hissed, pointing towards the movement. The foliage seemed to come alive as the Thornstalker emerged, its green skin making it almost invisible among the leaves. The creature's eyes were a haunting red, glaring at them with a predatory gaze. Nox was the first to act, charging forward with his weapon drawn. But the Thornstalker was quick, its spiked tendrils snaking out to parry his attack. Nox, hold! Thorian called out, his mind racing. The stalker was agile and cunning, using the dense foliage to its advantage. They needed to bring it into an open space. Saxum, clear a field with your skill.
Ventus, keep that thing at bay!
He ordered, channeling his magic. The earth magus nodded, slamming his palms onto the ground. The earth shook violently as the hard ground turned into soft dirt, toppling the nearby trees and creating an open field before it solidified once again. Ventus sent gusts of wind towards the stalker, forcing it into the open.
Good!
Thorian shouted, preparing his fire magic.
Now, Nox, draw its attention!
The black kobold nodded, dashing towards the stalker. He was a blur, his movements swift and precise, avoiding the tendrils and drawing the creature's focus. With the thorn stalker forced into the open, Nox became a whirlwind of motion, his every move a dance of danger. The creature lunged at him, its spiked tendrils whipping through the air, but Nox dodged, his slender figure darting about with graceful agility.
Ventus, gale slash, now!
Thorian ordered. Ventus nodded, he pointed with his finger toward the enemy while articulating a small chant. A gust of wind materialized before him, spinning faster until it became a cutting blade of air. With a forward thrust of his hand, he sent the gale slash spinning towards the thorn stalker. The creature reeled back, its cry echoing through the thicket as the wind magic cut across its form. In the momentary distraction, Nox closed in, his axe gleaming ominously.
Too slow, ugly green face!
Nox taunted, his weapon finding its mark on the creature's exposed flank. A pained growl escaped the thorn stalker, but it quickly retaliated, its tendril swiping at Nox. Using his superior agility, the shadow stalker sidestepped the creature's desperate attempt before shadows seeped from his hand. The dark aura completely covered the thorn stalker, blinding it momentarily. "Good job, Nox," Thorian commended, seizing his opportunity. With the enemy incapacitated, he rushed forward, palm ablaze with swirling flames. His hand clashed against the creature's core, the infernal fire consuming the shadows, and along with it, the thorn stalker. "Brilliant work, all of you," Thorian lauded, his gaze sweeping over his fellow combatants. "This was no big deal, it was easy," Ventus remarked, a grin tugging at his lips as he casually scratched the tip of his nose with his thumb. "I barely got a look in," the moon priest chimed in, his tone feigning disappointment.
"Isn't that a good thing?"
Saxum asked, his words laced with a light-hearted smile. The white-furred priest simply responded with a nonchalant shrug and a matching grin. With the stalker's demise, the party continued their cautious trek through the thorn thicket. The eerie green light from the fungi painted an otherworldly canvas on the forest floor, while the undergrowth's rustling hinted at the life hiding in its shadows. The air was thick with the scent of decaying leaves and wet earth. The group reached a wide clearing, the light blue glow from the phosphorescent plants giving the area a surreal, dreamlike quality. A small spring of clear water trickled into a crystal lake pool, its surface perfectly reflecting the surrounding foliage. "This is the luminous glade," Thorian began, his voice informative. "Its properties are akin to our own territory, where mana rejuvenates at a faster rate. Additionally, it aids in alleviating fatigue." At Thorian's words, the priest felt compelled to offer his observation. "This place is very interestingly designed.
It's as if they want us to clear it."
"The gods would miss their entertainment otherwise," Thorian responded cryptically. Before the priest could offer a rebuttal, Ventus interjected enthusiastically, "Nox, let's have a swimming race across the lake. Whoever loses has to call the winner Big Brother for a day." With the gauntlet thrown, the wind magus dashed towards the crystalline lake. He dove into its pristine waters, disturbing its serene beauty.
"Hold on, this isn't fair."
Nox immediately sprang into action, trailing behind Ventus, who had already seized a significant lead in their impromptu contest. Shaking their heads at the playful rivalry, Thorian, Saxum, and the priest utilized the moment of respite to recover from the rigorous combat against the thorn stalker. Gathering around the spring, they could sense the magical energy suffusing the area, soothing their worn bodies and hastening their recuperation. Meanwhile, at the lake's far end, Ventus and Nox were on the brink of completion. Despite Ventus initially holding the lead, Nox employed his superior agility to outswim him. Seeing his impending defeat in a competition he had instigated, Ventus gritted his teeth and aimed his palm at the shadow stalker.
"Wind gust?"
The enchanted wind spell whipped up a wave that sent the black kobold veering off course.
"That's cheating!"
Nox yelled out, his voice echoing across the lake as Ventus laughed triumphantly, speeding past him. Unfazed, the shadow stalker merely grunted and resumed swimming, resolved to regain his position. As the finish line loomed ahead, and the lake's bottom was just within reach of his feet, Ventus cast a glance over his shoulder. Seeing Nox gaining on him at an alarming pace, the wind magus clenched his teeth, fear of losing his standing urging him on. He leaped into the air, body curled in a somersault position. As he aligned himself just right, he summoned his spell and used wind gust as a midair propulsion. With a monumental leap, Ventus landed at the lake's edge. Upon touching the ground, he swiveled to his left only to find Nox standing right beside him.
"I was first,"
they both claimed simultaneously. Frustrated by their inability to determine the winner, they both cast resigned glances back towards their comrades.
"King, who won?"
Ventus asked. "It was me, right? I clearly jumped over the finish line before him." "No," Nox countered, shaking his head vigorously. "While he was spinning midair, I was sprinting to the finish line. I'm the clear winner." "Don't annoy the king with such nonsense," Saxum interrupted, a placid smile playing on his lips. "As for the victor between you two, it seemed like a draw from my perspective." "Yes, you both arrived at the finish line simultaneously," the priest concurred.
"No, but he was cheating throughout,"
Nox protested.
"There was no cheating,"
Ventus shot back. "I never said it was a magic-free race." While the two bickered, Thorian found himself chuckling and looking down, a nostalgic smile forming on his lips. Witnessing their youthful energy and camaraderie stirred fond memories of his own past. "It has been such a long time. I barely remember anything." As the group engaged in jovial recuperation, Thorian, in contrast, was quietly steeling himself for the imminent challenge, the quicksand marsh, the next zone within the dungeon. The luminous glade was a sanctuary within the verdant hell, a serenity that was paradoxical to the chaos of the dungeon. The warm afterglow of their triumph lingered, fueling their spirits for the impending challenges. "Keep your wits about you," Thorian warned, his golden eyes reflecting the phosphorescent light. "The quicksand marsh is treacherous. One wrong step and you could be sinking into oblivion." His words echoed, casting a somber veil over the camaraderie. They nodded, acknowledging the gravity of their next challenge, before venturing into the labyrinth. The contrast between the tranquility of the luminous glade and the eerie desolation of the quicksand marsh was stark. The ground beneath their feet turned soft and treacherous, the air filled with a decaying stench, while the distant moans of the marsh's inhabitants broke the ominous silence. The group advanced cautiously, eyes alert and weapons ready. Thorian's hands glowed, preparing to conjure flames at a moment's notice. Suddenly, the ground beneath Saxum gave way, quicksand threatening to swallow him. "Nox, a hand here," Saxum called out. The Shadow Stalker responded with lightning reflexes, his lithe figure darting forward, arm extended. His strong grip closed around Saxum's wrist, pulling him free from the deadly trap. "Thanks, mate," Saxum nodded, his eyes reflecting his gratitude. The group continued on their way through the dangerous marsh, making sure to avoid the spots that looked too soft or shifty. "Nox, what's the lead look like?" Thorian called out, breaking the ominous silence of the marsh. The Black Kobold had ventured ahead, scouting for the safest path. "This way," he gestured, guiding them around a particularly large and menacing Venus flytrap. The group complied, keeping their steps light and wary. As the earth gave a little beneath their weight, Ventus voiced his concerns. "This terrain doesn't suit me well, King." "Too much earth, not enough air," he quipped. A soft chuckle rumbled from Saxum, easing the tension. "Don't worry, Featherfoot. If you start sinking, Nox would quickly come and save you." Their banter was cut short when Nox suddenly held up a hand, signaling them to halt. "Armored beetle, right at the front," he whispered, eyes narrowed at the approaching threat. Ventus stepped forward, hands crackling with energy. "Leave this to me," he murmured, his gaze focused. With a swift movement, he extended a hand.
"Wind gust?"
A rush of wind erupted from his palms, catching the beetle off guard and flinging it sideways into a waiting flytrap. The plant snapped shut in an instant, trapping the beetle within its maw. "You really wanted to show off with that one," Saxum rolled his eyes, while Ventus laughed sheepishly in response. The Earth Magus then looked to the others, a note of caution in his voice, "But we must remain vigilant. More creatures lurk in the shadows." As if on cue, the earth beneath them began to ripple, the muddy surface bulging as creatures that looked like a giant mix of leeches and worms emerged.
"On your guard,"
Thorian warned, his hands already aflame. With the ground beneath them threatening to turn into a mass of writhing worms, Nox lunged at the nearest one, his axe slicing through its segmented body with ease. Ventus, aided by Saxum, manipulated the air and earth in perfect synchronization, causing the worms to lose balance, making them easy targets.
"We have to move. Now,"
Thorian commanded, leading the group through the marsh towards the safety of solid ground. "Be ready," Thorian warned, his gaze narrowing at the uneven terrain of the shifting mounds all around them. His words echoed in the eerie silence, casting a tense air over the group. "Something's moving," Nox whispered, his silver eyes glowing eerily in the dim light as he focused on a writhing mound. His hands tightened around his axe, prepared for the imminent attack. Suddenly, a giant worm burst forth from the ground, lunging at Saxum with its jaws wide open. The Earth Magus, reacting quickly, thrust his palm out. "Rock bullet." Saxum's conjured spell flew toward the incoming enemy, piercing through it instantly. The attacking worm, dead on impact, fell back into another set of mounds. More worms burst from the disturbed ground, hissing angrily. "Looks like we've found the nest," Saxum muttered, backing up against the group as they formed a defensive circle. Thorian's hands were aflame, casting a flickering glow across their grim faces. "I don't like this," Nox whispered, his gaze flitting nervously over the uneven terrain of the shifting mounds. "Too many places for things to hide." Hearing Nox's assessment, Thorian smiled. "I am not doing much, but this is perfect. Their group dynamics are shaping up well." "That is true," Thorian agreed with Nox, his golden eyes glowing in the eerie twilight as they scanned their surroundings. "Remember, nothing in this dungeon is as it seems. We need to stay alert and..." Suddenly, more worms burst from the mounds around them, their bodies writhing and hissing in anger. "Looks like we've roused the nest," Ventus remarked dryly, his hands crackling with energy. Just as the wind magus was primed to cast a gale slash, Thorian intervened.
"Ventus, what do you say to setting this entire place ablaze?"
The wind kobold's eyebrows knit together in initial confusion before his face brightened with comprehension. "You mean to try that combo, King?"
"It's been a while."
"Pick a target," Thorian chuckled, his voice ringing with anticipation. "Let's purify this forsaken realm."
"Right away, King."
Ventus responded with a grin, cracking his knuckles in preparation. He pinpointed a cluster of squirming mounds, and both Thorian and the wind magus began to summon their spells. Ventus's wind gust bolted towards its target, while Thorian's fireball trailed hot on its heels. As the elements intermingled, the fireball morphed into a cascading wave of flames. The worms emitted high-pitched shrieks as they attempted to flee from their nests, but to no avail. The raging inferno swiftly reduced them to ashes.
"Again!"
Thorian ordered, and the pair readied their spells once more. As they methodically incinerated the predatory leeches, the chorus of shrieks and squeals rose to a fever pitch. The discordant cacophony was filled with inhuman cries that lacked sympathy, yet managed to elicit an instinctive, primal reaction from the heart. Amidst this tumultuous cacophony, an unexpected notification resonated in Thorian's ear.
"Level up."
"Already?" Thorian frowned before checking his status screen. Display panel. Level, 13/30 EXP, 237/1500. Is it because of the double rewards? Thorian's lips curved into a smile. Hunting is first and foremost a dungeon activity. What we had been doing up until now was simply the poor man's version. While pondering inwardly, Thorian's gaze scanned his teammates. They all seemed absorbed with invisible screens hovering before them.
I've leveled up twice," Saxum noted casually. "How did that happen?" "Wait, what?"
Ventus interjected, surprised.
"I've leveled up twice too, but how did you manage that? It doesn't make sense."
"I've leveled up as well," Nox chimed in, "not twice, but I'm close to another level up." "The reason is that we're in a dungeon," Thorian provided an explanation. "The experience points are all shared between us. That way, even those with a supportive role get to reap the rewards." "I wish I could support you, but I'm just a liability," the priest sighed in self-deprecation. "Could you guys pretend to be injured so I can heal you? At least that way, I'd feel a bit more useful." "Don't worry, mate.
I got you."
Ventus reassured him, flashing a thumbs up that only added salt to the injury. Meanwhile, Saxum shook his head, a wry smile betraying his amusement as he looked at the priest. "I didn't realize you had that side to you," he commented. His tone might have suggested disappointment, but his expression revealed his true sentiments. As the group continued their friendly banter, Thorian's ears perked up. He shot a glance towards the black kobold, recognizing a similar hint of disquiet reflected in his eyes. "Nox, can you scout ahead?" With a nod, Nox darted forward, his lithe figure quickly disappearing among the shifting mounds. The others waited, their gazes scanning their surroundings, their hands tightly gripping their weapons. The stillness was only broken by the occasional rustle of leaves or a distant creature's cry. Suddenly, Nox returned, his face grave. "We have a problem," he announced, his silver eyes darting uneasily towards a particular mound. "There's something big over there." Before anyone could respond, the mound he had pointed at started shaking violently. With a deafening roar, a monstrous figure burst out from the ground, sending chunks of earth flying in all directions. As the dust settled, a creature, unlike any they had encountered before, stood before them. Its body was massive, its fur had a sickly green tint, and large fungi sprouted from its back. Its roar echoed in the air, sending a chill down their spines. However, while everyone was surprised by the arrival of the new creature, Thorian grinned. "So you finally showed yourself, fungal bear." As the dust settled, the fungal bear roared ferociously, the vibrations of its voice echoing through the desolate marsh. Its eyes, a luminous green, were filled with malevolent intelligence, mirroring the predatory instincts that had been awakened within it. The party froze, their breaths hitching in anticipation. Thorian, however, was smirking. The thrill of the challenge surged through him, his adrenaline-spiked blood singing a violent, euphoric melody. "Time for a real battle," he declared, his eyes glinting dangerously. "Be ready," he warned, his gaze falling on the priest. "I suspect we'll be needing your help soon enough." Before anyone could respond, Thorian lunged forward, flames dancing in his hands. He launched a fireball towards the fungal bear, striking it square in the chest. The beast growled, staggering back, but didn't fall. Instead, it shook off the singed fur, revealing a thick layer of fungi that seemed to absorb the impact. Thorian narrowed his eyes, noting this. It uses the fungi as a shield. Aim for its exposed parts. Nox, you're up. The black kobold nodded, his figure melding with the shadows. With a burst of speed, he appeared behind the fungal bear, his axe aimed at the vulnerable points. His attack landed, his blade sinking into the flesh. As he withdrew, the shadows coiled around the beast, its figure darkening under the assassin's skill.
Saxum, Ventus, follow up.
Thorian ordered, his voice echoing through the marsh. The wind and earth magi needed no further encouragement. Ventus conjured a fierce gust, momentarily disorienting the fungal bear. Saxum capitalized on the distraction, sending one rock bullet after the next towards the creature. They struck true, battering the beast and furthering the damage dealt by Nox. The fungal bear roared, reeling from the onslaught. In retaliation, it shook its body violently, launching a cloud of spores from the fungi on its back. They landed on the ground, immediately sprouting into a thicket of monstrous mushrooms. Fall back, seeing that they were about to be surrounded, Thorian signaled a retreat and led his team to a safer distance. As they regrouped, the priest stepped forward, his hands glowing with soft, golden light. Healing, he intoned. The comforting light washed over them, their minor wounds healing instantly. Thanks, Nox grunted, flexing his newly healed hand.
Now, what should we do?
I'm sorry, it was my fault, Ventus said while looking down. I should have used Gale Slash when Nox gave me the chance.
I would have split it in two.
No use apologizing now, Thorian shook his head. You will get another chance soon enough. The flame kobold became silent for a moment, his golden eyes studying the fungal bear and its newly formed mushroom minions. Nox, I need you to cover me, he finally said. I will join you in close quarters. Thorian then looked at the earth magus and said, Saxum, while us two are fighting, I want you to root it in place. He then shifted his gaze to Ventus. You finish it off after that. As he finished off explaining his plan, he stood up and glanced at Ventus. Let's set these mushrooms ablaze first. Ventus grinned at the prospect before conjuring his wind spell. The moment his wind gust was fired, Thorian's fireball followed suit and the elements instantly mixed. The resulting wave of flames torched the minions of the fungal bear. With a guttural roar, the beast immediately zeroed in on the group and pounced in their direction. Without Thorian having to give any command, the priest let out a small intonation before a brilliant moonlight showered both him and Nox. My body feels so light. It's been so long since I felt this way. Thorian rushed at the incoming enemy with a grin on his face as flames swirled in his palm. At the same time, Nox merged with the shadows and dashed with mind-bending speed. The two speeding bolts of flames and shadows darted from one side to the other, confusing the slow but powerful bear. As it looked left and right, Thorian found the most opportune moment where the bear was focusing on his friend before rushing with all his speed. With a palm full of fire, he struck at the creature's face. The sight of the fungal bear's ferocious face recoiling from Thorian's combustion touch felt satisfying, the scent of burnt fur wafting in the air. With Nox distracting the beast with feints and luring its attention, it had allowed Thorian to get close and land a solid hit. Yet the battle was far from over. Thorian swiftly moved back, escaping the bear's retaliation, its paw swinging where he stood a second ago. His breath came out in harsh pants, the adrenaline pumping in his veins urging him on. Beside him, Nox was a shadowy blur, his movements slick and fast. Every now and then, the black kobold would land a hit, further weakening the fungal bear and forcing it to grow more aggressive. The earthen voice of Saxum resounded in the midst of their choreographed dance of flames and shadows. Earthen grasp. With the incantation, the ground turned into sand before solidifying around the fungal bear's massive paws, rooting it in place.
Ventus now!
Thorian called out, his golden gaze never leaving the snarling beast. At Thorian's command, Ventus extended his hands, the air around him swirling with uncontrolled intensity.
Gale Slash!
His voice cut through the tense air like a sharpened blade. A tornado of wind shot forward, aimed at the immobilized fungal bear. The gust tore at the fungal growths, slicing through the thick layer that served as the creature's shield. A pained roar reverberated through the marsh, announcing the success of their plan. Suddenly, the fungal bear violently shook, throwing off the earthen hands and releasing a cloud of poisonous spores. I was waiting for that. With a grin on his face, Thorian launched a simple fireball at the cloud of spores. As the spell reached the glowing particles, a dust explosion engulfed the corrupted beast and sent a thunderous shockwave that threatened to lift Thorian off his feet. "Damn, Thorian! You blasted him off," Nox smiled and commented before his gaze shifted to an invisible screen in front of him. "I leveled up." Hearing Nox's words, the group let out a collective sigh. The fungal bear was now officially dead. As the final flames flickered around the charred body of the fungal bear, a sense of accomplishment washed over the group. A satisfied sigh escaped Thorian's lips. Nox's announcement of his level up was the cherry on top, confirming their victory in this part of the verdant labyrinth. With a swift wave of his hand, Thorian dispersed the remaining embers. "Good work, everyone," he commended, his golden gaze sweeping over his companions. They returned his sentiment with smiles and nods, basking in their triumph. Before they could rest for too long, Thorian's sharp eyes spotted a new pathway opening up in the distance, revealing a path scattered with golden-tinted rocks and crystals. His heart pounded in his chest as realization dawned upon him. The Guardian's lair. "Look," he pointed, catching everyone's attention. Their expressions mirrored his anticipation, a hint of fear and excitement lighting up their eyes. Without a word, they moved, entering the path that would lead them to their final challenge of this dungeon lair. As they treaded on, the glow from the golden rocks illuminated their path, casting long shadows behind them. Suddenly, the trail gave way to an expansive cavity, a sight that snatched their breath away. Nestled within the bosom of this golden grotto, a monstrous silhouette towered, a dreadful fusion of elegance and intimidation. It possessed a lengthy, serpentine body adorned with a multitude of legs reminiscent of a centipede. Its spiny tail glistened with a golden sheen, harmoniously echoing the surrounding rock formations and crystals in its cavernous abode. "The gilded spiketail," Thorian murmured, his gaze fixated on the creature. The sense of danger it radiated was intense, threatening to eclipse their triumph over the fungal bear. "Nox," he began, his gaze unwavering from the beast, "once we engage, I want you to use your shadow skill. That should give us an opening." The assassin nodded, his lips tugging into a confident smirk. "Saxum, Ventus," he continued, "just like with the fungal bear, immobilize and disorient it. That will buy us some time." The earth and wind magi nodded, their eyes mirroring Thorian's determination. "And," he turned to the priest, "we'll need your healing and buffing skills more than ever. Keep us fighting fit." With a solemn nod, the priest silently vowed to do his best. Taking a deep breath, Thorian took a step forward. "Ventus, set a gale slash on it. Saxum, use your skill to slow it down when it charges. Nox, you know what to do. Let's do this." At his command, they sprang into action. Ventus summoned a mighty gust of wind, sweeping towards the gilded spiketail. The creature roared, its attention drawn towards the threat. Seizing the distraction, Nox slinked forward, his figure blurring with the shadows. His speed was a marvel to behold, a testament to his abilities as an assassin. At the same time, the White Kobold followed the plan and conjured his spell. As Ventus' gale slash struck against the gilded spiketail, a cloud of dust billowed into the air. The creature roared, the ground shaking beneath its wrath. Thorian watched as the beast's golden spikes glinted menacingly in the light, an intimidating sight that sent a shiver down his spine. He didn't have time to ponder over it, for his attention was drawn to Nox. The assassin moved like a ghost, merging with the darkness around them. Thorian watched as Nox crept closer to the gilded spiketail, his figure blurring with his incredible speed. His heart pounded in anticipation of the upcoming attack. "Saxum!" Thorian called, his voice firm despite the deafening roars of the gilded spiketail. The Earth Magus, stalwart and calm, nodded. His hands glowed with an earthy hue as he called upon his magic. "Earthern Grasp." With his command, the ground beneath the gilded spiketail seemed to come alive, ensnaring the creature. The spiketail struggled, its spiketail thrashing, but the rocky bonds held firm. They had bought themselves some time, a crucial factor in their battle. Thorian watched as the dust cloud from Ventus' attack cleared, revealing Nox's figure behind the gilded spiketail. The Black Kobold was poised, his axe glistening in the dim light. With a swift, deadly stroke, his blade sank into the spiketail's flesh. "Backstab," Nox muttered under his breath. The effect was instantaneous. The gilded spiketail roared in pain, its body arching as it tried to shake off the pain. The beast was distracted, just as they had planned. Meanwhile, the priest had begun his incantations. A gentle glow enveloped his hands, the soft light soothing in the midst of their chaotic surroundings. "Moon's blessing," he intoned, the light spreading to envelop them all. Thorian could feel his body grow light and his fatigue washing away. The priest's blessing was as calming as always, a soothing balm that eased their worries. Now it was his turn. He stepped forward, flames dancing on his fingertips. His heart pounded in his chest, a rhythm in sync with the crackling fire. He felt the power surge through him, his veins throbbing with the intoxicating sensation of magic. Combustion touch, he murmured, focusing his energy into his palms. He could feel the intense heat radiating from his hands, his skin glowing with an ember-like light. With a burst of speed, he charged towards the gilded spiketail, his fiery palms extended. Thorian landed his attack on the beast, his combustion touch sinking into its flesh. The spiketail roared, a chilling sound that echoed in the cavern. Its tail thrashed, managing to break the stone binds that had held it captive. Thorian quickly rolled away, narrowly avoiding a blow from the creature's lethal tail. Even though his attack had worked, searing the giant creature's flesh and grilling its inside, the battle was still far from over. As Thorian regained his footing, his gaze met the spiketail's glowing ember eyes. The beast roared once more, a harrowing echo that sent shivers cascading down the rogue's spine. Its golden body, even marred by Thorian's successful strike, was luminous in the grotto's eerie light, a living nightmare wreathed in gold and spikes. As the unsettling silence stretched between man and beast, the grotto felt suddenly colder, its golden light less comforting. The gilded spiketail's predatory gaze was locked on Thorian, promising a terrifying battle yet to come. Thorian's eyes locked with the gilded spiketail's fiery gaze, an intense standoff in the dim light of the grotto. Despite the searing pain visible in its ember eyes, the beast's raw strength was still palpable, perhaps even more so. "That didn't work, we need something stronger." "Nox," Thorian hissed, his gaze never leaving the spiketail, "we need another round of Shadow's Caress." The kobold assassin moved like a wisp in the darkness. His low reply floated back to Thorian's ears, on it. A shadow darker than the cavernous grotto itself spread over the spiketail, dulling the glow of its golden exoskeleton. Thorian could almost taste the anticipation in the air as Nox's ability took effect. "Ventus, your move!" he called, his voice a thunderclap in the quiet. A wild gale whipped through the grotto as Ventus, their wind mage, summoned a gale slash. The spiketail roared, spikes clattering against each other as Ventus's attack ripped through it. Thorian saw his chance. Combustion touch, he thought, focusing his energy as he surged towards the beast. His hand glowed brighter, hotter, the fiery energy licking at his skin. He reached out, aiming for the spiketail's eyes. But the spiketail was faster. It curled into itself, forming an armored sphere that Thorian's hand skidded off harmlessly. A curse slipped past Thorian's lips. His fiery attack flickered, then extinguished, leaving only a scorch mark on the beast's exoskeleton. "Guys, it's regenerating!" Ventus's shout rang out in alarm, his previous attack wound visibly healing on the spiketail's hide. A terrifying roar echoed throughout the grotto, the sheer force of it sending Thorian stumbling back, his ears ringing. The spiketail uncurled, the spiked tail whipping dangerously, sending debris flying. Thorian watched in horror as the beast reared up, its target undoubtedly him. He stumbled backward, his heart pounding, his mind racing. "Saxum now?" he yelled, barely managing to dodge a stalactite dislodged by the spiketail's tail. Saxum's magic sprang to life, the very floor of the grotto responding to his command. Ripples spread through the stone beneath them, and from the ground rose a cluster of earthen tendrils, reaching out to ensnare the spiketail. At the same time, the soft, ethereal glow of moonlight began to gather around the priest. He extended his hands towards Thorian, the light trailing his fingertips. The moonlight surrounded Thorian, sinking into him, fortifying his speed and agility. The spiketail struggled against the earthen grasp, but it only tightened its hold, limiting its movement. Thorian could see the fire in the beast's eyes dimming, replaced with confusion and frustration. With the spiketail distracted, Thorian didn't waste any time. "Saxum, Nox with me. We're going on the offensive." Thorian summoned his fire magic once more, sending a fireball hurtling towards the spiketail. Saxum echoed his actions, a whirl of rock and wind forming in his hands before he launched it towards the beast. The rock bullet flew in a straight line, picking up speed as it closed the distance. In the chaos, Nox was almost invisible. With a swift movement, he slipped behind the spiketail, his axe glinting ominously in the dark. In one swift, fluid movement, he plunged his axe into the spiketail's flesh. His axe shone with light as it dug deeper into the flesh of the beast. But the spiketail wasn't down yet. With a deafening roar, it thrashed, dislodging Saxum's earthen grasp. It reared up and slammed its body into the ground, causing a tremor that destabilized the footing of everyone present. "Nox!" Thorian called out in alarm as the spiketail set its sights on the smaller figure. Just as the beast lunged, Saxum was there again. As Saxum invoked his spell, the cavern floor quaked and grumbled as it yielded to his will, erupting once more into an array of twisting earthen tendrils. The ground around the charging spiketail softened before hardening once again around it, yanking it back and arresting its assault on Nox. However, the spiketail's renewed fury was a terrifying sight, its fiery eyes promising certain doom to any who dared to approach. As it thrashed against the earthen grasp, its armored tail whipped around with vicious speed, sending shattered rock debris into the air. With uncanny agility, Nox danced through the chaos, darting in to land a quick strike before swiftly retreating. His movements were a deadly ballet, honed from the countless battles on the wall. But even the most skillful dance could stumble, and a sudden, careless whip of the spiketail's tail connected with the Shadowstalker. "Nox!" Thorian cried out as the kobold assassin was flung backward, slamming into a rocky outcrop with a sickening crunch. The shadowy figure slumped, his form still as the dust settled around him. "Nox!" The priest's voice echoed Thorian's alarm, but his tone held a calm determination. From his position, he extended his hands towards Nox, the gentle, ethereal light of his magic pulsing at his fingertips. As he chanted, a beam of moonlight shot forward, bathing Nox in its glow. As Thorian turned his attention back to the spiketail, his eyes fell on the path the beast had taken in its frenzied rush. His breath hitched in his throat as he spotted the toxic trail left in the creature's wake. It was an insidious thing, a blight on the cavern floor, eating away at the rock with a quiet, relentless hiss. "Damn," he hissed under his breath. The situation had just become significantly more precarious. Every movement now held the potential for disaster, a misstep into the toxic trail that would leave them vulnerable to the spiketail's assault. Gale Slash is not enough, even with Shadow's caress. His mind whirred at a frenetic pace, the imminent danger necessitating quick judgment. However, that disarray swiftly evaporated. In a flash, he knew what should be done. Fireball is not hot enough. I need something more. With a plan in his mind, Thorian pivoted to his team, a spark of determination was ignited within his fiery gaze. "Nox, I need another Shadow's caress. Ventus, get ready with Gale Slash. And Priest, bless me." Thorian ordered. His voice was steady, the flames in his palms flickering in tandem with his focus. Nox nodded from his position, dashing forward with his axe at the ready. "Right away," he said. He leapt into the air, becoming one with the darkness of the cave, the sheen of his black fur the last visible thing before he disappeared into the shadows. Moments later, a darkness more profound than the heart of the abyss spread over the spiketail. The beast roared, thrashing even harder against the earthen restraints, its glowing exoskeleton visibly dimming under Nox's ability. Ventus had already begun his incantation, his palms making broad sweeping gestures as the wind swirled around him, building up the power for his Gale Slash. Simultaneously, the priest extended his hands towards Thorian, the soft light trailing his fingertips. A gentle wave of energy washed over Thorian, his senses becoming sharper, his movements quicker. Sensing the opportunity, Thorian broke into a sprint, flames swirling around his right hand, ready for his close-quarters spell. "Ventus, now!" he shouted. With the elemental might of the Gale Slash building in Ventus's grasp, Thorian took a breath, steeling himself. He could feel the fiery energy of his own power thrumming along his veins, anticipation tingling in his fingers. With a determined grimace, he steeled himself, channeling all his focus into his palm. Then, with a grunt, Thorian launched himself into the air, defying the pull of gravity in his desperate bid for victory. His flames danced, crackling with energy, burning brighter and fiercer. Their light painted a dramatic tableau of dancing shadows on the cavern walls, reflecting off the myriad spikes and facets of the spiketail's exoskeleton. As Thorian flew towards the Gale Slash, he stretched out his hand, his combustion touch flaring with an intensity that matched his resolve. It was a dangerous game he was playing, as the Gale Slash was not something to be trifled with lightly. The sharp edges of the wind could slice through him as easily as they could the spiketail. But Thorian had made his choice. The heat in his palm intensified, the flames licking up his arm as he neared Ventus's Gale Slash. The wind sliced past him, and he gritted his teeth against the sting, the sheer force of the Gale Slash threatening to throw him off course. But Thorian was resolute. He reached the back of the Gale Slash and, with a shout, drove his palm into it. The flames met the wind and, for a moment, there was resistance. Then, with a deafening roar, the two forces merged, transforming into a cataclysmic tempest of fire and wind. The gale slash, now aflame, swirled with the golden hues of his combustion touch, flickers of bright orange and red dancing within its spinning winds. Thorian, in the eye of the storm, was a silhouette against the blinding brightness. The flames spread along the wind's razor-sharp edge, painting it with a burning aura that crackled with raw, destructive power. With a final yell, Thorian thrust his palm forward, as if he was releasing the flaming gale slash towards the spiketail. It hurtled through the air, a crescent blade of howling wind and roaring fire, amplified by the energy of his combustion touch. The grotto was filled with the ferocious hiss and crackle of the blazing wind as it cut through the stale air, carrying with it Thorian's desperate hope for victory. The spiketail roared defiantly, its fiery gaze burning into Thorian as the blazing gale slash rushed toward it. The raw energy of the flaming vortex was a destructive force unlike any it had ever witnessed before. The beast struggled in its earthen bonds, but Saxum's control was too strong, too unyielding. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. The grotto fell into a hush as the kobolds held their breath, their eyes fixated on the impending collision. The spiketail's ember eyes widened, the fire within flickering with a sudden realization. Then the moment passed and time surged forward. The flaming gale slash made contact with a deafening crash, the powerful wind driving the fire into the spiketail. The crescent blade of burning wind sliced through the air, cutting through the beast's mandible with an agonizing screech of tearing chitin. The destructive force of the combined elements was too potent, too merciless for the spiketail to withstand. It was a terrifying spectacle, the fiery gale slash tearing the spiketail's head apart with terrifying precision, splitting it down the middle. The intense heat from Thorian's combustion touch seared into the beast's golden exoskeleton, the unbearable heat burning through the layers of chitin and into the flesh beneath. The spiketail's roar of defiance morphed into a screech of agony as its body was engulfed in the flaming tempest. Its fiery eyes dimmed, its fierce defiance giving way to shock and pain. Thorian landed back onto the grotto floor with a soft thud, his heart pounding as he watched the flaming gale slash complete its path. The golden aura around his hand extinguished, leaving behind a lingering heat that slowly ebbed away. His eyes were locked onto the spiketail, watching the destruction their combined attack had wrought.
Level up, King!
As the adrenaline rush subsided, a sharp pain immediately followed. Thorian's comrades rushed to his side, eyes wide with worry. His right hand, from palm to wrist, was a mangled mess, the unfortunate consequence of thrusting his flesh into Ventus's gale slash. Moon's healing, the priest uttered swiftly, not daring to waste another second as the gravity of the situation became apparent. Thorian's wounds began to mend, skin and flesh knitting together to once again conceal the underlying bones. However, even as the priest's spell concluded, there remained deep scars on Thorian's hand, a stark testament to the high price of his necessary sacrifice. King, we were so worried, a Saxum voiced, his voice heavy with concern. Why would you risk yourself like that? Ventus too nodded in agreement, his expression mirroring Saxum's worry.
Yeah, King.
I couldn't have lived with myself if my skill had crippled you.
That was far too dangerous.
It was a necessary sacrifice, Thorian replied, shaking his head. If that creature simply had a robust shell, we would have gradually weakened it and eventually brought it down with repeated uses of gale slash and combustion touch. But its rapid regeneration made any strategy that didn't lead to instant death futile. While they comprehended Thorian's logic, the group couldn't shake off their sense of guilt and helplessness. The image of their leader having to injure himself for their victory filled them with a mixture of remorse and frustration.
Is your hand going to be all right?
Nox asked, concern evident in his voice.
Don't worry.
I can move it just fine, it merely throbs a bit, replied Thorian, giving a rueful smile. Once I evolve further, these scars will vanish. As their conversation reached its conclusion, Thorian's gaze drifted towards the twisted and shattered corpse of the gilded spiketail. Its form flickered, dissolving into golden particles of light. These particles gathered in the heart of the grotto, merging into a large, luminous chest. At the same moment, an ethereal, system-like voice resounded, its echo reverberating throughout the grotto. Congratulations, adventurers, the voice intones, you have vanquished the guardian of the second layer, the gilded spiketail. You've shown strength, courage, and exceptional teamwork. The treasure of this layer is yours to claim. Upon hearing the nearly otherworldly voice, Thorian couldn't help but smile. Accustomed to this voice from a decade of traversing dungeons, spending even a few days without its familiar sound felt strange to him. Well, brighten up, Thorian said, his voice buoyant as he began to stride toward the chest. Let's reap the rewards of our hard work. Notification: Dungeon Layer completion. You have successfully cleared the second layer of the verdant labyrinth. As you are the first to clear this layer of the verdant labyrinth, your rewards are doubled. Total arcane coins gained 1,000. Additional rewards await in the Guardian's chest. Reward recalibration.
Wow, that's quite a pile of coins.
Ventus couldn't help exclaiming, his words breaking the heavy silence.
How many skills can I buy with 1,000, King?
You can afford 2, Thorian responded. However, bear in mind there are other purchases you might need to make later that aren't skills. Having a reserve of arcane coins is never a poor decision, one never knows when a chance to buy something of great value might present itself. A chance? The priest questioned.
What kind of chance?
With a sigh, Thorian explained, they aren't available at the moment, but once our territory progresses a few levels, we'll gain access to certain vendors and merchants who offer exotic and scarce items.
Ah, I understand, the priest's eyes widened in realization.
You are indeed very wise, my king. Before Thorian could respond, Nox tugged at his arm.
Hey, Thorian. Let's open the chest, I want to see what's inside.
Oh, me too.
Me too.
Ventus chimed in enthusiastically. Observing their typically youthful excitement, Thorian couldn't help but grin. Without further ado, he guided the group toward the chest and proceeded to open it. As he opened the lid of the chest, a brilliant golden light spilled out, making the Thorian's lips perk up. A golden glow? Some good rewards await us. Items in this world were classified by various levels of rarity: white mist, green breeze, blue gale, yellow storm, purple cloud, crimson sun, and the legendary black star. Thorian could only hope that his rewards would include some items of the blue gale grade, that alone would exceed his expectations. When the light subsided, they peered into the chest. Nestled inside, an array of items lay waiting to be claimed. Thorian's eyes gleamed with anticipation as he picked up the first item. As he touched it, a screen window popped up in front of him. Verdant robe. Rarity blue gale. Class requirement Magus. Level requirement 10. Effect mana plus 10. Special effect increases the cultivation speed of Azure Dragon Meridian by 5%. Description: a robe made from the woven fibers of a mystic willow tree, it shimmers with a gentle green glow. Often favored by those cultivating the Azure Dragon Meridian. A robe with cultivation affinity? I didn't expect to find an item like this already. And it's a blue gale too. Thorian placed the rich, leaf-green robe back in the chest and picked up the next item, triggering another information window. Gilded spiketail plate. Rarity yellow storm. Class requirement warrior. Level requirement 20. Effect: strength plus 12, constitution plus 8, agility minus 5. Special effect reflects 5% of physical damage back to the attacker. Description: a heavy plate armor made from the spiky tail of the rare gilded spiketail. It's as tough as it is majestic, offering ample protection in close combat. A soft whistle echoed around the cave. A formidable piece of armor, Thorian said, eyes wide as he admired the shimmering exoskeleton plate. Our warriors would kill to have it.
Oh, what does it do?
Ventus asked, curiosity lighting up his features, while the others waited patiently for the explanation. See for yourself, Thorian replied, passing the plate to the White Kobold. Ventus's expression shifted from interest to astonishment as he read through the information screen. Forlun would kill to have this piece of equipment. Why? What's special about it? Nox, unable to suppress his curiosity any longer, snatched the item from Ventus's grasp. As he too read through the details, his eyebrows shot up in surprise. It grants 15 points in stats? It's like leveling up 5 times. That's a significant number of levels, the priest murmured from the sidelines. Meanwhile, Saxum turned his attention to Thorian. King, I've been meaning to ask you. What are your plans for these rewards? Thorian's brow furrowed in thought before he finally settled on a balanced solution. The items that each group retrieves from the dungeon belong to them. When distributing within the team, we first review all the items. If someone desires a specific one, they may have it. If 2 individuals covet the same item, the one who needs it most shall receive it. If both have an equal need, we leave it to chance. Each person can only claim one item until everyone else has received something, and then they can request a second item. That's a remarkably fair system, my king, the priest nodded, impressed. As always, your wisdom astounds me. Thorian responded to the priest's compliment with a warm smile before taking the verdant robe and handing it to him. Pass it around once you've had a look.
While the group took turns examining the two pieces of equipment, Thorian progressed to the next items in the chest, each one triggering a fresh information window. Flask of luminescent spores. Rarity green breeze. Description: creates a cloud of spores when thrown. The cloud of spores cause the target irritation, disorientation, and even vomiting. The effects depend on the power of the target. Earth Tremor Skill Scroll. Class requirement: Magus. Level requirement: 20. Use teaches the active skill Earth Tremor, which allows the user to strike the ground and cause an area of effect damage to nearby enemies. Description: a weathered scroll containing the instructions to perform the Earth Tremor skill. The parchment vibrates slightly when held, echoing the power within. When torn, the user learns the active skill Earth Tremor. A skill scroll? This one is good. Silently, Thorian handed the parchment to Saxum. Upon reading the item's description, the Earth Magus's eyes widened, and he wordlessly expressed his gratitude to the king. Meanwhile, Thorian's attention was fixated on the final two items in the chest. He swiftly retrieved them, inspecting the information screen that accompanied each.
Thorn Cloak.
Rarity Blue Gale. Class requirement: Assassin. Level requirement: 10. Effect: Agility plus 10. Special effect: provides a 10% chance to block a physical attack completely. Description: a dark green, supple cloak adorned with small, sharp thorns. Its elusive nature resonates well with those preferring the shadows. Bear Strength Pendant. Rarity White Mist. Class requirement: None. Level requirement: 5. Effect: Strength plus 3. Description: a simple pendant made from a bear claw. It radiates a faint, warm energy, subtly increasing the wearer's strength. While the last item was nothing to write home about, the first one made Thorian pause. This one should go to Nox. It fits him perfectly. Once all the items had been examined and their information shared, the group distributed them according to individual desires and necessities. The Earth Tremor Skill Scroll and the Thorn Cloak found their rightful owners in Saxum and Nox respectively, and with little deliberation. Thorian claimed the verdant robe, as no one else had embarked on their cultivation journey. The Wind Magus Ventus selected the gilded spiketail plate, with the intention of exchanging it for other items once the other kobolds also had an opportunity to conquer the dungeon. Since the priest didn't express a specific preference, he ended up with both the flask and the pendant. While he planned to utilize the flask in a precarious situation, the pendant would serve as a future bartering item. With everyone satisfied with their new acquisitions, the group began their trek out of the dungeon. As the group began their exit from the dungeon, Ventus cast a lingering look back at the towering tree.
Can we go back inside, King?
His voice echoed with an undertone of anticipation. I leveled up so much faster than when hunting goblins and giant rabbits.
That big guardian made me level up twice.
Even Saxum, who loved bickering with the Wind Magus, conceded to his sentiment with a nod. If we could just focus on hunting here all day, we would evolve in a couple of days. I wish we could too, Thorian responded with a lighthearted chuckle. However, we can only challenge a layer once a day. I want each of you to return to this first layer later with your respective groups and guide them through it. Can we truly manage that without your guidance, my king? The priest's voice wavered with concern as his gaze fell on Thorian's scar-ridden hand. The trials we faced in this dungeon were formidable, and some sacrifices were necessary. A solemn consensus rippled through the group, acknowledging the priest's sobering words. The daunting challenge of dungeon delving was, without a doubt, a far cry from the relative predictability of monster hordes at the city walls. But Thorian dismissed their apprehensions with a shake of his head. The first layer is considerably simpler than the one we just traversed. It has fewer traps, fewer elite monsters, and even the Guardian is significantly weaker. As long as each member of your squads has undergone their first evolution, you should encounter minimal difficulties in clearing the dungeon. Saxum breathed a sigh of relief.
That is good to know.
If we had to deal with that spiketail with a squad other than this one, we wouldn't make it back in one piece even if we had 100 lives. Thorian met Saxum's admission with a quiet smile, leaving his statement unanswered. He pivoted, prompting the others to fall into step behind him as they made their way back to the village. He couldn't suppress a grin as he cast a final glance at the immense tree in the distance. Clearing the second layer on our first attempt. It's remarkable. In my previous life, it took over a month to accomplish the same feat, and that was considered rapid progress. Even those monsters of the Thalasker Empire shouldn't be better positioned than me right now.
With this newfound conviction, Thorian guided his group towards the village. His gaze drifted skyward to the dual suns hanging in the afternoon sky, their presence signaling the passage of a few hours since their venture began. The doubled intensity from the two suns made the environment noticeably brighter than previous days, and even the temperature and humidity had increased. But none of this unsettled Thorian. To him it was merely a return to familiarity. As the group neared the village, they ascended a gentle hill and came to a halt at the precipice of a cliff. Their elevated vantage point unveiled the walls of Wolvendale village. The lifeless remains of the monstrous invaders formed a grisly mountain range, a grim testament to the futility of their assault. This morbid spectacle stood as a stark warning to all who dared to breach the village walls. Beyond them, death was the only promise. "We need to clear out this mess," Thorian muttered, a scowl twisting his features. "In this heat, the stench will soon become insufferable." "I fear I can already catch a whiff of it, King," Saxum interjected with a chuckle, before his expression sobered as he surveyed the pile of corpses. "If only I could control my earthen grasp skill a little better, I would have buried them all in no time." "If you could do that, burying the corpses would be the least of our worries," the priest responded, his laughter rumbling in his throat. "You could just bury that giant insect guardian alive and let it suffocate underneath the earth." "Can't you just set them on fire, King?" Ventus inquired, his head cocked in curiosity, only to receive a puzzled look from the earth magus. "Do you want the whole forest to burn?" "Our king would definitely survive the fire, but I wouldn't count on the rest of us living." Ventus's face flushed with embarrassment at the critique. "It was just a suggestion. At least I am trying to help, not like you whose only solution is a dreamlike hope." Thorian chuckled at their playful squabble, his mirth echoed by the hearty laughter of Nox from the sidelines. The Shadowstalker then turned to Thorian with a proposition: "Why don't we just do it the old-fashioned way? We can just push the bodies away with our hands. It's an exercise in futility right now since we will need to keep killing monsters," Thorian replied, shaking his head before shifting his gaze back to the wall. "The smell is going to be bad, but at least it's a warning for the monster not to keep coming toward us in droves." As their conversation neared its conclusion, the group prepared to descend the cliff, only to be halted by Thorian. "Priest, you are one of the few who I have not bestowed a name upon yet," Thorian declared, his eyes locked intently on the kobold adorned with lunar shamanist tattoos. "Henceforth you shall be known as Vigil. Your watchful nature and ability to perceive what others cannot makes this a fitting title." "Thank you, my king," Vigil replied, inclining his head slightly. "It is an honor." Thorian reciprocated with a smile before signaling towards the village with a nod of his head. "Let's go see what the others have been up to. I am expecting some new evolutions to join our rank." "Oh, the brown kobloid? I want to see what they're going to evolve to too," Nox exclaimed, his enthusiasm palpable. He descended the cliff with feline agility, Thorian and the others trailing closely behind. Upon reaching the village walls, Thorian glanced to his right to see the eastern gate and Nox, moving with startling speed atop the wall towards it. A smile playing on his lips, Thorian turned to the rest of the group. "Let's split up here for now. I would like each of you to check the other gates, evaluate the situation, and report back to me. Let's meet up in 20 minutes in the village hall." "Right away, King," Ventus responded with contagious enthusiasm. "Aqua will be so jealous when he hears about how we cleared the dungeon." With these words, he sprang up the wall and disappeared into the village. Saxum and Vigil followed suit, each making their way to the western and southern gates, respectively. His next course of action established, Thorian set out to follow Nox towards the eastern gate. Thoughts of Lapis brought an anticipatory smile to his face. It has been more than a few hours since his men had gotten their classes. I wonder how they look right now? As he neared the gate, Thorian's gaze was involuntarily drawn to the strewn corpses of the monsters surrounding him. While the quantity was unremarkable, some specimens among the fallen were indeed extraordinary. Thrycreans, tail mashers, and even a few thunder mashers lay in a macabre display. It appears my high expectations were well-founded. As Thorian ascended the wall, the raucous laughter of Nox and Lapis reached his ears. The two interacted with the ease and joviality of lifelong friends, their laughter mingling with that of the surrounding kobolds. Lapis's contingent was a particularly impressive sight. Four individuals stood out, towering above the rest, their stature broadened by their evolution. Their fur had morphed to a deep gray, and they bore thick, rock-like plates on their bodies, acting as a form of natural armor. These protective coverings were particularly pronounced on their shoulders, forearms, and legs. Thorian nodded his approval before his gaze slid over to another quartet. Recognizable likely as warriors, they were a bit shorter than the first group but still exceeded the average height of a brown kobold. Their muscles were more defined, their fur a deep brown, adorned with teal tribal tattoos reminiscent of those borne by Forlun's band of warriors. Thorian then turned his attention to a group of 5, easily identifiable as priests. They possessed the average kobold stature, with lean yet solid builds. Their fur had lightened to a gentle, sandy hue, suggestive of their intimate connection to the earth. Upon closer inspection, Thorian noticed unique, greenish patterns, akin to veins of precious minerals, subtly glowing beneath their fur. These lines of energy were more densely clustered around their hands. Finally, Thorian's gaze settled on the remaining pair. He instantly recognized them as earth kobolds, their form mirroring that of fearsome. In some ways, he felt a stronger affinity for these two magi, able to vividly imagine their abilities and the value they could bring to a battle scenario. Among this array of impressive evolutions, Lapis's form seemed rather nondescript and unremarkable. Even Nox, with whom he chatted merrily, bore glowing silver streaks across his body, showcasing his specialness. The gods are truly unfair, Thorian thought, heaving a sigh before shaking off his disappointment. Well, you still have your next evolution. I hope the heavens will look favorably upon you when that time comes. As Thorian nimbly descended the wall and approached the group, Lapis, engrossed in conversation with Nox, noticed him. Thorian, are you okay? The brown kobold, concern etching his features, divided his gaze between Thorian and the Shadowstalker. Nox just filled me in. You got roughed up quite bad in that dungeon, didn't you? It's a mere flesh wound, Thorian countered, dismissively waving his scarred palm and wrist. We were able to return safely with the spoils of war thanks to it.
That skill combination was insane.
Nox interjected, his eyes sparkling with admiration. I never thought something like that was possible. Making Ventus's gale slash full of flames made it so much more powerful, it just sliced through that guardian like butter. It's a high-risk strategy, Thorian conceded, a note of pride creeping into his voice. But the payoff is undoubtedly worth it. As Thorian and Nox delved deeper into their exploits, Lapis, along with several other kobolds, listened attentively.
If I may ask, what is this guardian you two are speaking of?
Lapis interjected with an interested look. It's the final monster you'll have to kill to finish the dungeon and get all the rewards. Nox elucidated, his voice thrumming with exhilaration.
I also leveled up twice just when it died.
That is impressive, Lapis acknowledged, his gaze subtly shifting to the Shadowstalker's attire. Is that where you got this green cloak from?
It looks very nice.
Nailed it, Nox chuckled, proudly displaying his thorn cloak, its fabric rustling softly. And it gives a solid 10-point boost to my agility, he added, before casting a glance at Thorian, who was similarly clad in a verdant robe. See? We're even matching. Thorian dismissed the superficial comparison with a shake of his head. Despite himself, a smile tugged at the corners of his lips. He then turned to Lapis and reassured him, don't worry, your turn to dive into the dungeon will come soon enough. Your men are developing well, just as you promised me.
Perhaps a little too well.
Lapis murmured, his gaze lowering. A self-deprecating smile sketched itself across his face. Thorian clapped him on the shoulder, offering a confident smile. You'll have your own shot too. Just keep putting in the effort. The brown kobold nodded in agreement, a gesture Thorian reciprocated. His gaze then shifted, sweeping over the rest of Lapis's men. Clearing his throat to command their attention, Thorian asked a seemingly simple question. Do you like it here? Thorian's query was met with a ripple of confusion as the kobolds exchanged murmurs and whispers amongst themselves. It took a few moments for one of the tallest kobold warriors, his broad shoulders suggesting a formidable strength, to step forward. I for one am content here, he declared, a satisfied look softening his rugged features. You never demand our food, and you permit us to hunt freely. I see no reason to dislike it. At the kobold's declaration, a wave of laughter and enthusiastic chortles surged through the crowd behind him.
Flame Kobold is the best. You're a great leader.
The effusion of praise was so intense that it left Thorian momentarily stunned. He had anticipated some measure of positivity, but he had never dared to dream that the group would respond with such solidarity. A flicker of suspicion crossed his face, and he turned his gaze to Lapis. Could Lapis have instructed them on what to say beforehand?
No, that's unlikely.
He couldn't have anticipated my spontaneous question. As Thorian studied Lapis, his bewilderment deepened. The brown kobold seemed as taken aback as he was. Could he be putting on an act? No, not even bricks could act so convincingly. Left with no other plausible explanation, Thorian turned back to the crowd, his eyes wide with surprise. Despite his extensive career, he had seldom encountered such a spontaneously jubilant congregation, making the moment decidedly extraordinary. And I didn't plant a single one amongst them. Slowly, a serene smile spread across Thorian's face as priests and warriors alike expressed their gratitude for the opportunities he'd presented them. However, indulging in sentiment wasn't Thorian's style. After gathering his thoughts, he pressed forward with the plan he'd been concocting all along. Turning back to Lapis, he asked a question that had been brewing in his mind for quite some time. Lapis, can I entrust you with an important mission? The brown kobold tilted his head curiously. Of course, Thorian. What would that be? Thorian nodded, elaborating on his request. I want you to bring some of the members of your tribe to join us here. Upon hearing Thorian's request, Lapis responded with a hearty laugh. Is that all? They would love nothing more than to come here. How many are you hoping for? As many as can be safely managed, Thorian replied. Are we going to have more brown kobolds join us? Nox chimed in, a spark of excitement lighting his eyes. We're growing so much, it's almost hard to keep up. You'll have to get accustomed to it, Thorian replied with a chuckle. This is just the beginning. Should I depart immediately? Lapis inquired. Should my group accompany me? Not immediately, Thorian shook his head. I need to return to the village hall for a meeting with my team. Afterwards, Nox and I will return here and take your place guarding the gate. All right, I understand, Lapis agreed, nodding. Good luck, Thorian. With that, the pair ventured back to the village hall. Upon entering, they discovered Ventus and Saxum lounging on the floor, while Melina graciously offered each of them a cup of tea. As the elven lady caught sight of Thorian and Nox entering through the door, she offered a respectful bow. I am relieved to see your safe return, my lord. Thank you, Melina, Thorian reciprocated with a slight nod. Could you assist us in submitting the quests we've completed? Immediately, my lord. Melina moved towards her desk, with Thorian and Nox following in her wake. As was customary, she marked their quest parchments with her magical stamp, allowing them to claim the rewards of their arduous efforts. Personal resources. Arcane coins 1800. Just as Thorian was about to join his group, having checked his arcane coins, Melina interjected. Have you ventured into Arendel's sanctuary, my lord? She inquired. At her query, Thorian paused, regarding the elven lady with intrigued eyes. Why do you ask? Are you curious about what lies inside? Melina averted her gaze, unable to meet Thorian's eyes. I apologize if I have overstepped my boundaries, my lord. No, you haven't, Thorian assured her with a shake of his head. He continued with a sigh, and no, we have not entered the sanctuary. I deemed it prudent to do so only when we've amassed greater strength. The elf considered his response for a moment before nodding in understanding. That is wise of you, my lord. Thank you, Thorian replied graciously. With a brief nod of acknowledgement, Thorian turned and began walking alongside Nox toward the pair of magi. His smile was relaxed, his eyes holding a hint of understanding. There is no use forcing her to speak right now. She will explain what is going on when she feels comfortable to do so. As the pair approached Ventus and Saxum, Nox immediately noticed the absence of a certain item from the Wind Magus's possession. Ventus, where's your golden armor? I traded it with Forlun, Ventus responded with a chuckle. In exchange, he promised to provide me with 5 items better suited to me later. Everyone heard his promise, so there's no backing out. That was daylight robbery, as Saxum shook his head. 5 items for one? How on earth does that add up? Upon hearing the Earth Magus's protest, Thorian tilted his head thoughtfully. A yellow storm equipment is worth much more than 5 normal items. Especially one that fits Forlun's fighting style so perfectly. It's Ventus that got robbed here. Yet Thorian kept his thoughts to himself, recognizing that Ventus needed to learn from such experiences and grow accordingly. Soon enough, the priest also rejoined the group after collecting the rewards for his quests. As each member reported back to Thorian, he gained a comprehensive understanding of the village's status. Operations at the northern gate were proceeding smoothly, with the team stationed there gradually leveling up. The western group of brown kobolds was making steady progress towards their evolution, with the 3 magi having already transformed, 2 into earth kobolds and 1 into a flame kobold. As for the orcs to the south, they encountered no problems under the watchful eyes of Ifrit and Inli. Their class levels had caught up with their species level and they were now slowly approaching their impending evolution. Once the meeting concluded, the group disbanded. Thorian and Nox headed to the eastern gate to relieve the evolved brown kobolds. Perched atop the wall alongside the Shadowstalker, Thorian decided to check his status. Display panel. Ding. Status panel. Race Flame Kobold. Level 1430th EXP 1435/1650. Class Magus. Level 2020th EXP Max. Lifespan 40 years. Cultivation Realm Chi Gathering Second Stage 5.3%. Stats. Strength 58. Agility 62. Constitution 35. Mana 65, 75. Chi 14. Free points 15. Skills. Minor Fire Affinity passive. Flame Resistance passive. Fireball active. Combustion Touch active. Waterball active. Observing his steady progression, Thorian was filled with awe. I'm on the cusp of leveling up once again. At this rate, I should evolve to a Kobold champion by the end of the week. After taking a moment to assess his status panel, Thorian turned his concentration back to his spell. Waterball. Description: you summon a watery orb and launch it at your enemies, drenching them and knocking them off balance. Proficiency 79.5%. Not too bad considering I haven't focused on training it for the past few hours. Satisfied with his advancement, Thorian dismissed his system screens, bringing his attention back to the present. Just as they had done before, the pair spent the next hour and a half thinning out the incoming beasts, which allowed Thorian to level up twice. During this period, his sole focus was casting his waterball spell at every opportunity, while Nox dispatched the remaining monsters using his backstab skill. The intensity of the monster onslaught against the walls had undeniably dwindled. The goblins, in particular, hesitated to venture forth after witnessing the grim spectacle of their fallen comrades. Their sense of self-preservation warned them that lingering would lead to dire consequences. However, the other forest denizens lacked such cognizance. Consequently, the duo eagerly hunted any beast daring enough to approach Wolvendale's walls. Once they had eliminated a troop of Rebarians, Nox sprinted up to the watchtower, striding toward Thorian with a look of excitement etched on his face. I finally finished that quest, it took so long. Nox exclaimed.
Quest?
Thorian quirked an eyebrow. Which one are you referring to? The monster hunting one, the one where we need to kill 500 of them to finish it, Nox clarified. The Revenge on the Monsters quest? I wasn't aware someone else had it. Brow furrowed in surprise, Thorian inquired, when did you receive it? How did that happen? When we saw you accept the quest, Thorian, Nox replied, scratching his head in confusion. Were we not supposed to? I just saw you take the quest and I did the same. The other guys also took it after I did. No, it's good that you took it, Thorian responded, shaking his head. I just didn't anticipate it. I was under the impression it was a unique quest. I guess I didn't pay attention.
So?
Should I go claim the rewards? They look incredible. Nox exclaimed, his voice brimming with anticipation. Thorian paused for a moment before replying, if I were in your shoes, I'd wait. The level-up rewards tend to increase in value the longer you delay. For instance, ascending from level 26 to 27 requires more than double the experience points needed to progress from level 10 to 11. Nox cast his gaze downward, mulling over Thorian's words. But there is a time limit for this quest. Should I wait until around the end? That could be overly ambitious, Thorian suggested, scratching his furry chin contemplatively. My recommendation would be to delay at least until you upgrade your class. Beyond that point, it's a matter of choice. You can opt to wait longer to maximize your rewards or claim them immediately to boost your strength as soon as possible. Each decision carries its own advantages and pitfalls. Nox lowered his gaze, nodding in comprehension. I see. I'll wait until closer to the deadline, then. Your decision, Thorian shrugged nonchalantly. He then redirected his attention to his display panel, concentrating on his waterball skill. Waterball. Description: you summon a watery orb and launch it at your enemies, drenching them and knocking them off balance. Proficiency 100%. Spotting his proficiency at its peak, Thorian couldn't suppress a grin.
Good, I can focus on the other skills now. He then turned to the Shadow Stalker. Nox, you'll need to carry on alone for a bit. Continue your hunt and ensure you finish off your prey with backstab. You should be nearing the point of unlocking a new skill. With these words, Thorian sprinted into the village, heading straight for the Magus Guild. There, he purchased the last 2 class skills from Fizzlegrin. The Buzzlekin was delighted to see genuine customers spending arcane coins on skills, rather than merely the Kobolds who were receiving their first basic skill at no cost. Upon returning to the Eastern Gate, Thorian practiced using both of his newly acquired skills concurrently. He utilized Windgust to augment Nox's already remarkable agility, and Rock Bullet to inflict wounds on their adversaries. Of course, he targeted non-lethal areas to ensure Nox could deliver the finishing blow with his backstab. As the hours slipped by, the dual suns descended over the horizon, making way for a duo of moons to ascend. These twin celestial bodies sat side by side in the night sky, one a pallid blue and the other a pinkish orange. The sight was truly enchanting, suffused with an element of whimsy that was strikingly absent from the battleground below. Hours elapsed as Thorian single-mindedly sought to hone his dual skills. His level was already considerably higher than his fellow comrades and, by extension, all the humans in the vicinity. The sole goal that eluded him was class advancement, and he was determined to close that gap as swiftly as possible. 2 hours later, Nox dispatched the final Thumpalope from its herd with a deft backstab, before he halted, his gaze fixated on an unseen screen.
Yes. I finally unlocked it.
Nox exclaimed, glancing up at Thorian. This is the skill, right?
Whisper step.
Thorian smiled at the Shadowstalker's infectious enthusiasm. Congratulations, Nox. You can now proceed to upgrade your class if you wish. Nox beamed at Thorian's confirmation before stating, hang on, let me test it out first. No sooner had the words left his mouth, he vanished. Thorian, fully aware of the skill's effect, turned to find Nox behind him on the watchtower. Seeing Thorian's knowing gaze, Nox stammered, Gage, how did you know I was here? Even I was surprised at the speed. I am aware of more than you could possibly fathom, Thorian responded, shaking his head. Now, why don't you return to Whipserwind? After all, you're his employee. If you want your wages, you should at least fulfill some of his tasks. Recalling the agreement he had made, Nox's eyebrows shot up.
Oh, I forgot about that.
I will also go and advance my class, I will become stronger that way. With these words, Nox performed a backward somersault off the watchtower and sprinted into the village, heading for the Assassin Guild. Thorian watched him with a proud smile before redirecting his focus to the forest beyond the wall. As per his training regimen, Thorian continued employing his 2 new skills to hunt the monsters that emerged from the forest depths. Only the evolved species, like the Tailmasher and Thrycrenes, required him to descend and dispatch them with a combustion touch. For the majority of the others, he simply cast a wind gust to disorient them before delivering the coup de grace with a rock bullet. An hour passed swiftly before the rhythmic thudding of heavy footfalls echoed from the forest. Initially assuming it was a monster horde, Thorian readied a fireball spell, but as the figures came into clearer view, he clenched his fist, extinguishing the flames. What approached wasn't a horde, but a tribe of brown kobolds and kobolds. Witnessing the brown-furred creatures emerge from the dense foliage, their forms bathed in the ethereal light of the twin moons, was a sight to behold. More than 100 individuals stood before him. From within their ranks, a brown kobold separated from the group and advanced toward him. As the kobold neared the watchtower, he sank to one knee. Thorian, my king, he declared, as promised, half our tribe has heeded my words and sought you out. They are prepared to pledge their service to you, asking for your protection in return. Lapis, you truly impress me. Acknowledging the brown kobold with a nod, Thorian leapt from the watchtower and positioned himself before the assembly of creatures. He stood with an air of command, surveying the crowd, his gaze taking in the mix of fear, uncertainty, and hope reflected in their eyes. Ladies, gentlemen, Thorian commenced in a deep, authoritative tone, you've come here, placing your hopes and trust in Lapis's words. I assure you, I am not here to let you down. He then directed his attention to those visibly filled with fear and uncertainty, the children, the mothers, and the elderly. If it is protection you seek, then I shall provide it. All I request in return is your loyalty, to me, and to your fellow brothers and sisters. I urge each of you to commit to hard work, so that we may all thrive together. Thorian's assurances visibly soothed those harboring worries, as though his personal confirmation eradicated any lingering doubts. Next, he turned his attention to the skeptics, most of whom were young and robust, potential soldiers in their prime. For those of you desiring to become strong, to ensure no one can intimidate you or harm those you cherish, I have the solution. I can give you with an opportunity to attain a level of strength beyond your wildest dreams. You merely need to strive for it, to pursue it. Those willing to work hard and risk their lives will be richly rewarded. He cast a glance at Lapis's group of evolved kobolds and chuckled, "The proof of my words stands right beside you." The evolved kobolds reciprocated with a chuckle and proudly displayed their stature, evoking awe from the rest of the tribe. Some hooted and laughed, while others clapped in admiration. A kobloid, bright-eyed and youthful, stepped forward towards Thorian. "Here, become strong?" "Yes, you will," Thorian affirmed. "With me you will grow strong." Upon hearing Thorian's reassurance, the kobloid's doubtful expression morphed into a broad grin.
Great. Me like.
His voice ignited a spark in the crowd, setting off an enthusiastic cheer. Despite their rudimentary language, Thorian could discern their excitement. Glancing to the side, he noticed Lapis beaming at him. With a tilt of his head, Thorian beckoned the brown kobold towards him. "You did remarkably well, Lapis," Thorian commended, casting his gaze over the crowd. "Finally, this is beginning to resemble a true kingdom." Upon admitting the new contingent of brown kobolds and kobloids within the village boundaries, Thorian allocated the responsibility of the Eastern Gate's security to Lapis's squad. Subsequently, they shepherded the sizable group towards the hall, the locale for their citizenship ceremony. Lapis, already well-versed in the rites of integrating newcomers into the ranks of disciplined soldiers, was entrusted with this duty by Thorian. The only specific instruction he imparted to the brown kobold was the imperative to undertake the Revenge on the Monsters quest, a directive intended for him and his kinfolk. With these tasks set in motion, Thorian turned his steps towards the territory altar. The area surrounding the demonic face was awash with a profusion of tree trunks, varying in size and scale. A vast, brown tide had overtaken the place, its weight compressing the verdant grass beneath into submission. "I should have all my men finish their tree quest first before I start upgrading the village." With a clear objective in mind, Thorian embarked on a comprehensive tour of the village. Deciding to journey to the northern side, he chose Aqua to accompany him. Aqua, with his quick learning abilities and reliability, was an obvious choice for Thorian. He showed the water magus how to allow the altar to absorb a precise quantity of wood and then guided him from one gateway to another. At each, Thorian would assume guard duties while Aqua shepherded the group towards the territory altar, enabling them to accomplish their quest. This methodical approach was replicated at every gate until all of Thorian's men had successfully completed their respective quests, earning them each a reward of 100 arcane coins. The only remaining participants were the newly admitted kobolds and kobloids who were still navigating their way through the guild's aptitude tests. Reflecting on the time required for Lapis's compact unit to complete their journey, Thorian estimated that the latest entrants would not acquire their classes by day's end. As a result, he redirected their efforts towards the tree quest, ensuring they capitalized on the day's quest rewards and didn't squander the opportunity entirely. After the combined efforts of over 100 kobloids and kobolds, resulting in the absorption of 100 units of wood by the altar, the once dense ocean of tree trunks had considerably lessened. Now, Thorian could discern the demonic visage of the altar from a considerable distance. With all the groundwork and tedious tasks now completed, Thorian could finally concentrate on the endeavor he had been eagerly anticipating, upgrading the village. Territory resources. Resources. Gathered experience 21.7k. Wood 22.6k. Observing the mounting resources, a smile unfurled across Thorian's face. This was the tangible result of a day's discipline and concerted effort. The orcs, who had been chopping trees without respite, Ventus, who had offered his assistance, and the kobolds, who had vigilantly safeguarded the village, dispatching all intruders at the wall, had all contributed to this success. Just how long did it take me last time to reach this state? Thorian reflected nostalgically. Finding the altar and knowing how to claim it was the hard part. That took 3 weeks, I believe. Upgrading it was much easier though, since we never had the problem of lacking citizens. Brushing off his nostalgic reverie, Thorian issued the command. Upgrade village. Upgrade conditions. 100 registered citizens. 1000 gathered experience. Upgrade the 4 statues into guilds. Conditions fulfilled. Do you wish to upgrade the Wolvendale village to stage 2?
Yes, I wish.
Realm advancement. A blinding sweep of blue light engulfed the village, prompting Thorian to shield his eyes. As he gradually reopened them, he surveyed his surroundings only to discern that nothing had substantially altered.
Let's look at the panel. Display territory. Spoiler.
Thorian spent a moment studying the colossal screen before him, taking time to absorb all the information displayed. Despite his decade-long tenure as Lord, many details from the lower levels had faded from his memory. Once he had perused the entire screen, his lips curved into a triumphant grin. Without delay, Thorian issued his first command: upgrade wooden wall. Building upgrade. Wooden wall Stage 1. The wooden wall is a sturdy barrier designed to protect the village from external threats and encroachments. Crafted from strong timber, this defensive structure forms a circular perimeter with a radius of 200 meters from the village altar. The wall is equipped with watchtowers and gates to enable monitoring and control of access to the village. Upgrade. Gathered experience 2,250. Wood 3,000. Do you wish to upgrade the wooden wall to Stage 2?
Yes, I wish.
From his vantage point, Thorian watched as a massive cloud of dust billowed and shrouded the wall, the ground quaking beneath him. Emerging from the dust, the wooden wall soared to over 10 meters high, its watchtowers appearing more imposing than ever. Having reinforced the external fortifications, Thorian shifted his focus towards the village's internal infrastructure. His next move was to upgrade the village hall. The instant transformation lent the hall an enhanced sense of grandeur and authority. As Thorian stepped inside, he observed a more spacious interior, furnished with tables and chairs scattered around for villagers to convene and converse. Melina's desk had also been upgraded, now adorned with decorations and a more expansive workspace. Congratulations on the upgrade, my lord, the elven lady bowed gracefully, you've truly been working diligently. Thorian returned her smile and cast a glance towards the staircase leading to the second floor.
Are the rooms upstairs operational? He inquired.
Currently, there is just one room on the second floor, which is well equipped for strategic meetings, Melina elucidated. If you wish, my lord, you may also access it via the rear entrance of the hall. Thorian nodded in acknowledgement of the elven lady's explanation. His gaze then drifted towards the bulletin board, where 5 familiar quests instantly captured his attention. As I thought, the daily quests reset when you upgrade the hall.
Good thing I remembered that detail.
Having accepted his daily quests anew, Thorian exited the hall and proceeded to review his journal.
Show journal.
Journal. Subjugate 20 monsters daily. Cast a spell 40 times daily. Cultivate your chi for 2 hours daily. Gather 200 wood units daily. Clear 1 dungeon daily. Pact with the Wolven Guardians unique. Purification of Arendal's Sanctuary quest chain. Revenge on the monsters, complete rare. Thorian gazed at his journal brimming with quests and allowed himself a satisfied grin. Let's tackle the easier ones first, then we can concentrate on the rest. Given his proximity to the altar, Thorian opted to complete the wood quest first, enabling the demonic face to absorb a few fallen trees. Having accomplished this, Thorian decided to construct the one edifice he had been eagerly anticipating. Build Cultivation Hall. A resonant rumbling echoed from the south, just beyond the precincts of the Priest Guild, as a new structure surfaced from the earth. Thorian advanced towards the Cultivation Hall, a humble yet purposeful edifice nestled within the heart of the village. Crafted from polished golden brown wood, it exuded an aura of organic simplicity. Its gently sloping roof welcomed an abundance of natural light and fresh air, while the intricately carved wooden door echoed the ethos of living harmoniously with nature. At first glance, the Cultivation Hall might appear as a simple hermit's abode, but upon closer inspection, its thoughtfully conceived design became evident. Elegantly carved motifs adorned the wooden panels, windows were strategically positioned to greet the morning sun, and a cleverly structured interior nurtured an ambience of meditation and cultivation. Encircling the main hall were smaller rooms dedicated to solitary meditation, linked by a serpentine pathway bordered with saplings. Entering one of these secluded rooms, Thorian felt the air pulsate with ether's energy. He immediately recognized that his cultivation sessions within this domain would yield even more significant results. The hall just gives me half an hour added. I shouldn't waste it trying to break through the Vermilion Gate. It's better if I focus on gathering more chi. With a clear strategy formulated, Thorian removed his verdant robe to keep it pristine during his meditation. He settled down cross-legged and began to breathe with deliberate intent. As he commenced his session, he could feel the world's potent energy attempting to permeate his body. Although his outer channels were more congested than those of an average human, they were significantly more receptive than when he first initiated his practice. Soon, a torrent of ether coursed through his channels, converging in his dantian. As these ether particles condensed into chi drops, Thorian felt his dantian gradually becoming replenished. By the time half an hour had elapsed, Thorian knew he had made substantial progress. Upon opening his eyes, the first command Thorian formulated was Display Panel. Ding. Status Panel. Race Flame Kobold. Level 16/30 EXP, 128/2200. Class Magus. Level 20/20 EXP Max. Lifespan 40 years. Cultivation Realm Chi Gathering Second Stage, 21%. Stats. Strength 62. Agility 67. Constitution 37.
Mana 67.
Chi 20. Free points 15.
Skills.
Minor Fire Affinity passive. Flame Resistance passive. Fireball active. Combustion Touch active. Waterball active. Wind Gust active. Rock Bullet active. Good progress. Thorian smiled in satisfaction before scratching his furry chin and thought. Maybe I should just focus on increasing my chi for now. I don't need to break through my meridian nodes until I reach the first realm's bottleneck. With this resolution in mind, Thorian rose to his feet and utilized water balls to cleanse his body as well as the soiled floor. After ensuring the room was clean, Thorian once again donned his verdant robe and exited the cultivation hall. Casting a backward glance at the building, a wry smile tugged at his lips. It's a pity we won't have access to proper cultivation skills until the next village stage. If I try to teach them manually, there's a risk of chi deviation which could lead to debilitating injuries. Shaking off his minor regret, Thorian continued his tour of the village. From a distance, he could spot the crowd of brown kobolds and kobolds trailing behind Lapis. Their sizable presence within the small village was impossible to overlook, even if he had wanted to. With a series of mental commands, Thorian manifested two new structures, the blacksmith's forge and the alchemist's lab. These buildings were critical cornerstones of any territory when it came to trade and daily life. However, their current utility for Thorian was rather limited. Both structures necessitated an extensive assortment of blueprints and recipes to truly reach their potential. And we need civilians with a vested interest in these professions. Having a sizable army is beneficial, but we need those who will create and repair our military equipment, Thorian pondered. Deciding to address these new buildings later, Thorian redirected his attention towards the exterior. As he approached the now fortified wall, he found himself genuinely impressed. The wall had become taller, thicker, and more robust, and was armed with numerous traps. Rows of spikes were strategically positioned along the wall to deter any blind charges aimed at breaching it. The increased height made it a formidable challenge to scale, further enhancing the village's defenses. After admiring the new fortifications for a few moments, Thorian journeyed from one gate to the next. At each entrance, he instructed one of his seasoned party members to form a squad and lead it into the verdant labyrinth dungeon, where they would tackle the first layer. Thorian recognized the immense significance of this undertaking, not only for the rewards from the quest and dungeon but also for the battle experience his troops would amass. After successfully navigating it once, they would be equipped to return the following day and traverse it effortlessly with other inexperienced members. Consequently, this newfound knowledge and wisdom would rapidly disseminate throughout the village. However, with 5 members dispatched, the remaining guard squads would struggle to perform their duties as efficiently and safely as before. Therefore, Thorian took up the mantle, assuming the guard responsibilities of the absent members. For each gate, it would take approximately 40 minutes to an hour for a squad to journey to the dungeon and return. Thus, the remainder of the day passed swiftly with Thorian transitioning from one gate to another, standing guard for the departed members. During this time, his sole focus was on honing the proficiency levels of his a wind gust and a rock bullet skills. By the time the final dungeon delving squad had returned, Thorian had achieved significant progress in mastering both spells. Rock Bullet. Description: you create a barrage of rocks that fly toward your enemies, pummeling them and leaving them vulnerable. Proficiency 39.7%. Wind Gust. Description: you summon a powerful gust of wind that can knock your enemies off balance, extinguish fires, and enhance your speed and agility. Proficiency 37.4%. Good progress. At this rate, I should be done with all 4 skill requirements tomorrow. Satisfied with his near attainment of his goal, Thorian swiftly closed the screens and dashed back to the village hall. The day was on the brink of ending, and he aimed to claim the rewards for his daily quest before their expiration. Upon entering the hall, he was surprised to see his old group congregated around a table, engrossed in conversation. Nox, Ventus, Saxum, Vigil, and Forlun all sat together, sharing tales of the day's happenings.
"O King?"
Ventus noticed Thorian's entrance. "Have you returned to collect the rewards from the new quests?" Forlun, appearing more confident than ever in his golden chest plate, proudly thrust out his chest and asked, "Did you get a chance to revisit the dungeon and complete that quest again? These rascals received double the rewards."
"No, I didn't." Thorian shook his head as he made his way towards the elven woman. "Though it's a pity I didn't complete that quest, it's more prudent to ensure the safety of the village rather than pursuing minor gains." Upon reaching the desk, he offered Melina a smile and asked, "Could you assist me in claiming my quests?" "Right away, my lord," Melina elegantly replied. As usual, the elven lady stamped the quest parchments, allowing Thorian to swiftly claim his rewards. The new daily quests offered twice the rewards of the previous ones, significantly augmenting Thorian's wealth. Personal resources. Personal resources. Arcane coins 2,200. Looking at his resources, Thorian smiled wryly. "It's a shame we do not have access to the marketplace yet. There aren't many ways to spend these coins currently." After closing his system screen, Thorian turned back, his gaze resting upon his group. "Good thing you're all here," Thorian began, directing his gaze towards the staircase. "We will be having our first official meeting now." As the group ascended the staircase, Thorian cast a glance over his shoulder, addressing the Moon Kobold with a casual inquiry.
"How was your day?"
The kobold gave a dismissive shrug.
"Nothing much.
Ever since the boys evolved, we've not had any more trouble." With a smug grin, he puffed out his chest, the glimmer of his new equipment catching the torchlight. "But this beauty really made everything easier. Haven't taken a single scratch since the moment I put it on." "It's really good, right?" Ventus, always eager to remind others of their shared trials, interjected. "We had to work really hard to beat that boss and get it. You better be thankful." "I don't have to be thankful for anything," Forlun scoffed at the suggestion, his voice dripping with dismissive scorn. "We've made a deal, pure and simple. I am going to get you 5 pieces of equipment that suit you, so don't go around yapping about it." "Better follow through," Ventus shot back, his tone turning sharp. "Or I'll strip that armor right off your chest that you're so prideful about." As they continued their banter, Thorian settled into a chair around the round table, motioning for everyone else to do the same. "Let's begin the meeting." Turning to Nox, who was situated to his left, Thorian inquired, "How was your first night with Whisperwind?"
"What have you been doing?"
Nox emitted a weary sigh before replying. "He just had me inscribing skill scrolls for the whole time while he was testing the new recruits." His expression then brightened considerably, but in the end, he did let me do my class advancement ceremony. It looked so pretty with stars and bright lights filling the room. "Lucky you," Ventus murmured under his breath, a tinge of envy tinting his words. Vigil, however, directed a warm smile towards the Shadowstalker. "Congratulations, you're the first among us to advance his class, if I'm not mistaken." His gaze then shifted to Thorian, curiosity sparkling in his eyes. "Unless you have already done so, my king." "No, not yet," Thorian responded, shaking his head. He turned his attention to his most trusted ally. "Nox, congratulations. What kind of advancement did you get?" Scratching his chin pensively, Nox looked up as if searching the rafters for the right words. "There were many options that I saw, but after talking with the master, we chose Shadow Reaper. He said that it combined my stealthy shadow skills with really strong hard-hitting spells. It felt like a good mix of the two." "Shadow Reaper, huh?" "Whisper Step unlocks the Reaper class. I guess this is a variant of it due to his racial abilities. It seems like there is a lot of synergy between races and classes." Saxum remarked, his voice rich with admiration, "You're growing stronger by the minute, aren't you? I'm glad you're with us, you would be a terrifying enemy." Ignoring Saxum's compliment, Forlun clicked his tongue and retorted, an edge of mockery to his tone, "I wonder if your new skills can make a dent on my armor." Choosing to let Forlun's prideful comment slide, Thorian redirected the group's attention. "The primary purpose for this meeting is to discuss our next course of action." "We are at your command, my king," Saxum responded readily, his loyalty evident in his tone. "Simply provide us with our directives and we will carry them out."
Vigil met Saxum's gaze, voicing his own perspective. While I share your sentiment, I believe our king seeks more than blind agreement. Ignoring potential problems will not erase them. Instead, it only intensifies their impact when they inevitably surface. Intrigued by the priest's comment, Thorian pursued the topic. Do you have a specific concern in mind, Vigil?
Yes, I do,
Vigil confirmed, nodding his head. The forest presents real dangers. Our group can handle the tailmashers and thrycrenes, particularly with a few evolved kobolds in our ranks. But it's the elusive and crafty creatures that blend into the surroundings which pose the greatest threat. Thanks to the experience you've instilled in us, I managed to navigate my men safely through a labyrinth of traps. However, less powerful groups might struggle with this. Navigating through the forest could be particularly challenging for them. We didn't have that issue at all, Ventus couldn't help but interject, a boastful edge to his tone. If I don't know what I'm seeing in front of me, I just throw a gale slash at it. That usually solves any problem quickly. Thorian cast a fleeting glance at the wind magus before returning his attention to the priest. Your concern is noted. It suggests we need to reassess our approach to these excursions. Falling into a thoughtful silence, Thorian drew on his considerable military experience to quickly formulate a plan. Moving forward, we'll conduct dungeon expeditions with platoons of approximately 50 men each. These groups will be accompanied by between 5 and 10 evolved kobolds. Their role will be to ensure the group's safety and navigate the forest's threats, thanks to their prior experience and familiarity with its dangers. Once Thorian concluded outlining his plan, Forlun raised a concern. Wouldn't this leave our village vulnerable? Saxum was quick to counter, we're expecting a significant influx of new recruits soon. As they bolster their strength, we'll have plenty of manpower to secure our walls. Thorian nodded in agreement. Exactly. The new brown kobolds and kobolds will be distributed evenly across all 4 units. You'll be inundated with fresh recruits. Later in the day, once they've adequately leveled up, we'll form the 2 platoons. The entire operation should take around 2 hours, roughly 1 hour for each platoon to venture into the dungeon, clear it, and return. The group took a few moments to digest Thorian's strategy before signaling their comprehension with a series of nods. Only Forlun remained silent, his brow furrowed in contemplation. Do you have an issue with my plan, Forlun? Thorian queried, observing the moon kobold's introspection. Tell me, we can solve it if your concern is valid. It's not about the plan, Forlun replied, scratching his head in confusion. It's about the humans, when are we planning to hunt them? Our quest deadline is fast approaching. Remembering the challenge that all monsters had received, Nox's eyebrows shot up in realization.
That's true.
If we manage to hunt 500, we're promised a special evolution.
I wonder what form that would take.
We will also get a skill and lots of level ups, Ventus chimed in. Thorian nodded slowly in acknowledgement. Those are valid concerns. However, if we launch an assault on the city before ensuring the stability of our village, we risk serious complications. He paused, gnawing thoughtfully at his thumb. Moments later, his face lit up in a grin. Have you stumbled upon a solution, my king? Vigil inquired, his own smile mirroring Thorian's newfound optimism. Thorian nodded and elaborated, I've accepted a quest that speaks of a pack of dire wolves residing within the forest. These beasts are highly formidable, swift, and most importantly, known for their unwavering loyalty. The quest instructs me to broker a pact with them. If we succeed, we can entrust the village's safety to these wolves. This way, we needn't worry about external invasions or conflicts stemming from our new recruits. How will we make that pact with them? Forlun asked, his brow furrowed in confusion.
And when do you plan to do so?
Diplomacy is an area in which I excel, so put those concerns aside, Thorian assured, a confident smile gracing his features. As for the timing, we will venture into the forest at the break of dawn. I'll select a small, elite group to accompany me as we explore the region.
Take me with you.
Ventus interjected eagerly, his hand shooting up. Going outside is so much more fun than just killing the same things all day at the wall.
That got really boring.
Certainly, Ventus, Thorian replied with an amiable chuckle. He then drew in a deep breath to introduce the final topic of discussion. I'd like to address tonight's guarding duties. Given that each of your units will be reinforced with new members, I propose that you divide your squads. When you split the unit, ensure that each group contains a roughly equal number of veterans. The 2 factions will then alternate guarding duties throughout the night. One group will rest first, then halfway through the night, they'll switch with the second group. I'll arrange for individual houses for each unit, which will help in locating the resting group.
Houses?
Nox questioned, an eyebrow raised in confusion.
Thorian clarified, houses provide shelter where you can sleep without being drenched by rain all night. Additionally, they come equipped with beds, offering more comfort than the bare, hard ground. Having covered all necessary points of discussion, Thorian concluded the meeting. The group dispersed, each kobold heading to his respective unit stationed at the village's 4 gates. Meanwhile, Thorian embarked on a construction spree, erecting an assortment of houses throughout the village. Desiring to acknowledge the bravery of those consistently defending the village, Thorian prioritized the construction of several Stage 2 houses close to each gate. These accommodations were reserved for the selfless defenders who spent their days repelling relentless onslaughts from monstrous creatures. For the village's remaining residents, Thorian created a substantial number of Stage 1 houses. Though less elaborate, these buildings exuded a welcoming atmosphere. They were clean, well-structured, and marked a significant improvement from sleeping on hard ground or within dank caves. Once the new recruits had visited all guilds and chosen their classes, Thorian rendezvoused with Lapis. After explaining his plan to the brown kobold, they divided the fresh batch into 2 distinct groups. The first group consisted of civilians unfit for combat due to health issues or age restrictions. The other was composed of healthy individuals eager to demonstrate their usefulness and pursue personal growth. Impressively, the second group outnumbered the first by a ratio of 4-1. Pursuing his strategy, Thorian escorted the civilians to their new homes where they settled in for the night, while Lapis divided the fighters into 4 groups, each assigned to one of the village gates. Following Thorian's directive, each unit split into 2, deciding on the order of their night shifts by drawing straws. With his plans implemented successfully, Thorian raised a Stage 2 house for himself near the altar, a location known to his trusted inner circle of 5 in case of emergencies. Finally, after what seemed an eternity of planning and execution, Thorian could retire for a much-needed rest. The cacophonous din of battle reigned on the fields of Loxley, a gruesome symphony woven by clashing blades, shrieking monsters, and the anguished cries of the fallen. Tristan, drenched in the blood of the goblins he'd just dispatched, took a moment to survey the battlefield. His sword was slick with their lifeblood, a morbid testament to his prowess in combat. In the aftermath of their cryptic encounter with the Lady in Green at the city plaza, Tristan and his hand-picked warriors had advanced into the heart of Loxley. Strategically positioned atop a steep incline, the inner city afforded them a commanding vantage against the relentless flood of monstrous invaders. The formidable ring of stone walls that ensconced it provided a stalwart bastion against the monstrous onslaught. The bastion walls of Loxley were ablaze with kinetic action. The air buzzed with the whistling of arrows as they cleaved the night sky, their lethal flight paths ending in the bodies of encroaching beasts. Knights, clad in battered armor, fought with valorous tenacity against the goblins audacious enough to breach their bulwark. But among the valiant fighters, one figure stood out, both in vigor and power. An old man, surprisingly spry and vital, was tearing through overgrown cats and sickly-looking goblins. The sword Tristan had previously gifted him was glowing with a magical blue hue, each swing of it was a death sentence for any creature unfortunate enough to be within its reach. His finesse was lacking, yet the raw might that he possessed rendered such subtlety unnecessary. As Tristan watched him, a pang of jealousy snaked its way into his heart. Sir Robert's prowess is nothing short of awe-inspiring. I can't help but envy his miraculous growth abilities. He is faster and stronger than me even though he is 60 years my senior. Yet, within this undercurrent of envy, a torrent of gratitude and respect drowned out these negative whispers. Robert had been an unwavering pillar of strength by their side, matching the relentless rhythm of battle stroke for stroke. A more steadfast ally Tristan could hardly imagine. Looking away from the chaos of the front lines, the inner city buzzed with a different kind of intensity. Rescue squads darted in and out of the gates, bearing the wounded guards into the city's heart where physicians stood ready. Arrows were in high demand, and young boys, brave despite their tender age, were kept busy distributing them. Meanwhile, the women, resilient and unyielding, brought pots of steaming stew and soup to the weary defenders. A voice sliced through Tristan's thoughts, abruptly yanking him back to the present. Food supplies are dwindling, Tristan. The estimates are preliminary, but it seems we have enough to last 10 days at most. And that's only if everyone restricts themselves to 1 meal per day. That's too little, Tristan responded, his brows knitting together. Is that counting your family? They should have substantial reserves. Oswald exhaled deeply, his head shaking in denial.
The Stronghearts have been summoned by my father. They've barricaded themselves inside the manor, citing the Heirs Protection Act as their justification. Tristan's mouth hung open, disbelief clouding his face. But you're the heir. Who are they attempting to protect? Father is mad at me about that, Oswald replied with a shrug. And it's not just my family. The Bloodworths and the Caulfields have also severed contact with the outside world. They said that they had already accomplished their noble duties by giving us half their guards. Unbelievable. Tristan's anger flared, his thumb clamped between his teeth. Do they not understand the situation we're in? Monsters are ravaging the city for the love of all gods, and they continue their power plays? I don't think they've seen the situation enough to understand it. Oswald conjectured, clicking his tongue in disapproval. They've been hiding in their manors for the whole day. Gathering his composure, Tristan steered the conversation in a new direction.
Let's leave them be for now.
Have you been in touch with the Merchant Alliance? Half of them are dead, and the majority of the remaining are too terrified to engage in discussions. They are convinced the end of the world is nigh, and our efforts are futile. Oswald's face contorted with distaste, but he then offered a sliver of hope amidst the despair. However, one did express a willingness to negotiate. Thank the gods, Tristan exhaled, shaking his head. Who is it? The head of the Alliance, Jasmine, Oswald responded, a glimmer of a smile crossing his features. She didn't represent the Alliance when she spoke to me, but only herself. Half of her goods are stranded on the outskirts of the city and are irretrievable, but the remaining half is here. She has a stockpile of spices, vegetables, and an assortment of fresh and dried fruits. With careful rationing, it could extend our supplies for another week, 2 at most. That's promising. Tristan's eyes widened momentarily in surprise, before he composed himself. And what is her asking price? A seat at the table, Oswald replied, his tone sardonic. I informed her that I would convey the proposition to you, but asked her not to hold her breath. The nobles will undoubtedly oppose her inclusion. I'll grant her that seat, Tristan decisively countered, leaving Oswald visibly surprised. If she's prepared to rise to the occasion, I'm willing to reward her handsomely. I'm confident my father would support this decision too, given the nobles' lackluster response to the crisis. You're in for a fierce struggle. Perhaps even more formidable than the one we're currently engaged in, Oswald commented with a sigh. On another note, what should we do with her mercenaries? By law, we have the right to commandeer them. Let them be, Tristan shook his head. They're the only leverage she has to prevent us from outright seizing her reserves. I prefer to allow her to retain this advantage as a gesture of good faith. If she's to have a seat at the table, then it's crucial to nurture a healthy relationship from the outset. And there's no sense in shattering that trust over a mere 20 or so mercenaries. Oswald paused, taking a moment to fully absorb Tristan's words, before shrugging and chuckling. You have a knack for finding wisdom in the oddest of situations. I suppose that's just part of my charm, Tristan responded with a shared chuckle. Their banter was abruptly cut short by an urgent call from outside.
General Henry. Open the gates.
The gates creaked open, allowing nearly 100 refugees to pour into the inner city. Fear and exhaustion were deeply etched onto their faces. As the guards ushered these beleaguered souls towards temporary shelter, Oswald shook his head. Forget about that 10-day estimate. We're looking at 8. A laugh threatened to escape Tristan, but he swallowed it back, recognizing the inappropriateness of the moment. Oswald certainly had a knack for injecting humor at the least expected times. Beyond the weary refugees, Tristan caught sight of the Iron Vanguard, astride their magnificent white steeds. They were seasoned warriors, their legends preceding even Tristan's birth. Each held a gaze that told tales of countless battles and hard-fought victories. However, the man at the helm of this elite unit wore an incongruously cheerful expression. General Henry sported a warm smile that belied the grimness of their circumstances. His kindly visage, coupled with his advanced age, would have given the impression of a benign old man, if not for Tristan's knowledge of the truth beneath the facade. Your Grace! You're a sight for sore eyes, General Henry bellowed, his laughter reverberating through the air as he dismounted and advanced towards Tristan and Oswald. What on earth happened here? This place is starting to resemble a refugee camp. At the general's jest, Oswald laughed while Tristan simply shook his head. It's a sign of the times, I'm afraid, the prince commented. A sign indeed. Henry guffawed, his gaze drifting beyond the inner city walls. Who would have thought it wouldn't be the Thalasker or those sun-on devils that would be our undoing, but rather some monsters straight out of folklore. He then looked at Oswald and said, "And look at you, young man. You're doing your ancestors proud. I want to see the day when you ascend to the head of your family and restore its former glory." "I yearn for such a day myself, Sir Henry," Oswald humbly replied. The general barked a hearty laugh, clapping Oswald on the shoulder. "You've come a long way." Watching the older man dominate the atmosphere, Tristan queried, "You were with my father, weren't you, Sir Henry? Have you two parted ways?" "We have indeed," the general confirmed, nodding. "He ventured west while I tackled the north. He's likely still engaged in the rescue of civilians." "It seems to be in his nature, he can't sit idle," Tristan responded with a rueful laugh. "Though his presence would be beneficial here as well." "The nobles are proving to be a thorn in your side, your grace?" the general inquired, eyebrows furrowed in concern. Tristan responded with a frustrated tilt of his head, "Well, they're certainly not making things easy."
"Is that so?"
General Henry laughed heartily. "Then you should count your blessings, your grace. That is more than one could hope for." Observing General Henry's buoyant demeanor, Tristan found himself caught up in the infectious wave of optimism. Seeing the young prince's spirits lift, Henry nodded approvingly. "Well then, why don't we go somewhere private to have a proper meeting? I'm sure you have much to tell me." "Absolutely, Sir Henry," Tristan assented, his gaze wandering over to Robert, who was resting with the other guards. "But there's someone I'd like you to meet first." Before Henry could voice a query, Tristan approached the old man, extending an invitation for him to join the upcoming meeting. Tristan, having extended the invitation to Robert, proceeded to introduce him to General Henry. "Sir Robert has provided us with invaluable insights, many of which have proven essential and will continue to guide us," he explained. A warm smile touched his lips as he turned to Robert. "He also represents our hope against these fiendish creatures." "That's high praise from the prince himself," Henry admitted, taken aback. "I'm intrigued as well." The four of them made their way to Tristan's nearby manor for the meeting. As they approached the main building, Robert trailed behind the group, still reeling from the sudden turn of events. While Tristan and General Henry delved into tales of yore, Oswald gave them space, opting instead to engage Robert in conversation. "Mister," the young knight initiated, curiosity coloring his tone, "could you elaborate on this level-up concept again? You mentioned it enhanced your strength, and I've witnessed that change myself. But how does it work?" Tristan picked up on their conversation from the front and found his interest piqued. He glanced at the general, their gazes met, followed by mutual chuckles as they realized their shared curiosity. Both were eager to hear Robert's explanation. In response to Oswald's query, Robert delved into his understanding of the surreal events that had unfolded since the onset of the apocalypse. He explained the notion of experience points, describing how eliminating monsters augmented them, leading to these so-called level-ups. Each level-up allowed for points to be distributed among 4 primary stats. He was able to grasp the roles of strength, agility, and constitution. However, the concept of mana remained elusive. As he allocated points into the first 3 stats, his physique had surpassed its former limits, achieving a state of fitness unprecedented in his 6 decades of life. Their conversation continued as they climbed the manor's grand staircase and entered Tristan's strategic planning room. Dominating the space was a vast table, atop which rested a meticulous map of Loxley and its surrounding regions, speckled with a myriad of tokens and markers. "Let's start from the beginning," Tristan suggested as he sank into his chair, his gaze fixed on Robert. "Sir, would you kindly recount the events that occurred at the plaza?" Robert gave a nod of affirmation and embarked on his narrative. "Me and my grandson Rue, we were sitting out in the plaza, looking for a bit of fresh air and a nice view of the moon. This group of people shows up, led by this green-clad lady. We exchanged a few words with them, but I can't shake the sense that something's off about her. Before long all hell broke loose." He paused to draw a deep breath before continuing, "Amid all that chaos, me and little Rue, we were scared out of our wits. I reached out to one of them giant statues that popped up in the plaza, and that's when I got these strange powers you've been seeing. Meanwhile, that gang was up to no good. I didn't like the look the lady shot me, so I grabbed my grandson and ran. You know the rest." Tristan listened intently, acknowledging Robert's account with a nod before subtly gesturing for Oswald to proceed. Rising from his chair, Oswald spoke. "The woman, named Nalia, doesn't possess a surname. She's what you'd call the queen of the underworld. Anything unsavory, slave trading, assassinations, small-time thefts, robberies, she and her lot are behind it all.